Can't see everybody, but we will get started. Welcome to, hang on here, I apologize, our October 24th, I'm losing track of my days here. Welcome to our October 24th regular school board business meeting. It's great to see everybody here. If you have an agenda, in front of you, hopefully you can all see it, and you'll see that item number 1 deals with our 5 strategies. Item number 2 deals with our live YouTube feed of this meeting. Students, just so you know, this is taped. You will all be rock stars after tonight. People will be looking for your autographs.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Item number 3 is our call to order. So with that, Ms. Steve, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'd ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bellingham, thank you for leading us in the pledge. You're welcome. This brings us to item number 4, the approval of the agenda. I have 2 requests for the agenda tonight before I look for a motion to approve. I would ask that item 13A, the student board representative presentation, I see them smiling back there. I would ask that they become item number 5B, so they would do their presentation right after the music presentation. I know they're busy and they've got some other things going on tonight, so my hope would be that. And then we have one addition to add to the agenda tonight. I believe Ms. Zavarol just passed something out to everybody. It's Resolution 23-18, the appointing of responsible contract authority. What happened there is we previously appointed Todd Sesker in this position in January, and once Mr. Benty started, we did not formally essentially reapprove him or approve him. So I would ask that we do Resolution 23-18 for item 12G. It would come right after 12F. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll move for approval agenda with flexibility.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 5, recognition, awards, and presentations. And item 5A is the middle school music department presentation with Ms. Tammy Nelson, Amelia Tesdall, thank you, and Miss Elizabeth Barron, and a whole host of middle school students. So if you are watching on YouTube, Miss Barron, what's the guess? How many students out in the hallway?
We probably got about 50 kids outside here.
Okay, so whatever you can see in this room of 25-ish and about 50 out in the hallway, so we've got about 75 or so middle school music students here. So with that, leadership, band leadership, music leadership, orchestra leadership, I'll let you take it away. Well, before I turn it over to the rest of the board members, I just have to say, wow, spectacular job. Thank you for being here. And I'll have some closing comments, but I'll turn it over to the board members. Board members, questions or comments? The floor is yours.
I'm just wondering if we can start every board meeting.
Students, are you available every third Monday of the month at 5:30?
It looks to me like we maybe have several different groups here. Would one of you explain? Is there a choir and an orchestra?
We're the choir. We are the choir.
Hi, choir.
We're the chamber choir. Just the 5 of us. It's an after-school club. Yeah.
Okay, nice to see you, chamber choir. Thank you.
And I am one in both, orchestra and choir.
And then you guys are.
I'm the only boy here.
We're tree instruments, right? Orchestra. Okay.
We are 8th grade.
And band is 8th.
Who's in the hall?
8th grade band.
Hey guys, can you hear me? 8th grade.
I think they said random children.
Other board members, questions or comments?
Well, that was
Mr. Robichaud.
absolutely wonderful. Thank you for coming. That was beautiful.
Thank you very much for taking time. I know you're anxious to get home and do homework, so we'll keep you in yeah. Oh, maybe you already got it done during orchestra. No. I do have a question. How often do you get together as a group?
Every Monday.
Every Monday? And then,
Yeah, just.
okay, how many students, how often do you get together?
Like
Every day. Okay.
An hour every school day. Yeah, like.
Well, 40 minutes. 47.
Okay.
Wait.
So,
Yeah.
sometime every day you get together as a group? Okay. A little bit. Okay. Thank you.
Other board members, questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may, so band, thank you, because as a former coach, and those of you who do coach, you're on the sideline before, and I coach basketball for a basketball game, when that school fight song comes on, when they played that, I still tingle. If you know what that means right here, and then orchestra and choir, when you started, if that didn't melt your heart, I don't know what, just the initial, and you people are talented. And thank you to your instructors and your parents who encourage you to do that, but you are phenomenal and you're going to get nothing but better. So thank you for appearing here and showing what another great program we have here in Faribault Public Schools.
Any other questions or comments, board members? All right. As Mr. Bellingham said, there's a lot of talent out here. It's a great program in Faribault Public Schools. Over MEA, I got the opportunity to actually drive out to the Penn State, Minnesota Gopher football game. And I can tell you that their band and the amount of energy that their band and their performers, the non-athletes, the non-football players, that they bring to 105,000 cheering people is truly off the charts. As Mr. Bellingham said, when they're playing the fight song, I don't know who else in here got the goosebumps, but I certainly did. And so I would really, really encourage all of you, even if you have some difficult moments in band or choir or orchestra or whatever, stick it out. The great things that will come from the bit of hard times that you go through and you have to work through will be well worth it. There's a lot of talent in this room and in that hallway. And once again, thank you to all of you for coming. It would be wonderful if we started every meeting like this at 5:30. It's probably not realistic, but it's really, really great. And just thank you to all the leadership. And I would just ask all the adults in the room that aren't playing the band and the orchestra and singing, I just ask if we'd all stand and give everybody a round of applause. Teachers, do you have any comments you want to share before you leave and take all the students with you?
I think, well, first we just want to say thank you for allowing us to be here this evening and take a few moments of our time. We do have some concerts coming up, so if you guys are free the evenings of, I want to make sure I get this right, November 15th is the band concert, 7 p.m. Choir concert is November 21st, and orchestra concert is December 12th. And those will be either in the gymnasium at FMS or in the auditorium. We would love to see you guys there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else you guys want to add? No. Thank you for the opportunity. Awesome.
All right, thank you.
guys.
Thank you. We're just gonna pause for a few minutes here and let everybody clear their stuff out.
That was fine.
Test it.
With our student representation. If you don't mind, will you just, in case people are watching for the first time, just make sure you introduce both of yourselves and go from there?
Hi, I'm Jillian Huberty. Oh, and I'm a sophomore at the high school.
And I'm Sophia Mentz, and I'm a senior at the high school.
And we are your student representatives. And so today we just wanted to talk to you about our district youth council that we help run. So district youth council is a group of members from the high school and the ALC, and we all get together and we talk about what we can help improve at school, what's going on, just how to improve the atmosphere and how everything is going. So we just had a meeting last Friday.
The Friday before Friday.
Yep.
Fridays.
And we had a great turnout of 19 kids, and it was split evenly in the middle with 9 students from the high school and 10 students from the ALC. And so we met and we had lunch, we ate pizza, we were at the ALC, and we had round tables. So we had four different round tables, all with different discussions on each one, and there was posters. And so we split up into small groups, and not our normal groups who we'd be friends with, but we randomized it. And we sat there and we talked for about 15 to 20 minutes at each table. And we wrote down on the poster what it thinks, what it feels like, looks like, and sounds like. And so our 4 different groups were social interactions, mental health, extracurriculars, and the classroom experience. And so at each different round table, we went and we talked in our groups, and we did what it sounds like, looks like, feels like, and we wrote down ideas. And so then after about 15 minutes, we would rotate. And we did this on each one until at the end, our posters were filled with all these ideas and different colors from all these different student perspectives. and that we got a lot of great feedback and ideas that we are excited to share with you from that.
You did so good. Okay, the first one is social interactions. Keep in mind that this is like our ideal. Obviously, some of this stuff just like isn't possible because of codes and whatnot. But ideally, we would like to be able to choose groups and do more groups instead of such isolated learning. This is something that we'll talk about later is desks. It just makes you feel so isolated and alone in a room for 7 hours a day. But that's more tied into the classroom one. So choosing groups, sometimes choosing if you'd rather work alone. Some people really don't like groups, being able to personalize your own experience within the classroom and how that works. We also talked about having set aside time to socialize. Right now at the high school, we don't because we got rid of flex, so we have lunch, and a lot of people don't have good friends in their lunch or whatnot, so you just go from class to class to class with only a 4-minute period in between, and you don't get a lot of time to see your friends, which sometimes just creates more of that sense of loneliness.
And that also adds on to the mental health part. If we can improve that social interaction, we can help improve that mental health aspect in school.
And then we also, a big thing we talked about was conversations between students and teachers. Talked about making that feel more equal, because sometimes it really doesn't. It feels like a teacher and a student, which an aspect it is, because there are mentors and we're learning from them, but also being able to have open conversations with them will just create that sense of safety and a comfort person that sometimes a lot of students are missing in their life. So that's a really big part of something we want to look at.
All right, our next roundtable topic that we had was mental health. And what we came up with was taking down that stigma that there is with mental health. And I know we've come over that over the years, and mental health does have a better stigma, and it's getting better, but there still is that initial stigma. And how do we improve that at the school system? How do we make it okay so you can go and talk to your counselor? How do we make it so that that's normalized, so that kids don't feel weirded out or like they're different because they're reaching out for help? We also talked about more like brain breaks and mental health days. So maybe just having a day in the classroom where we color, or we watch a kids movie, or just getting out and walking around or playing a game of silent ball or something, just to help release that like energy that's like built up. That helps. Like studies show that if we can move and we can socialize, we're happier. And if we're happy in school, we learn better and test scores go up and engagement increases. So if we can help increase that want to be there, we can do that by like improving our mental health.
And a lot with mental health, it's very personalized to the person experiencing it. Everyone has their different experience with mental health and how it affects them, especially how it affects them in school. So making sure that ideally we could take time to get to know every student and what's best for their mental health. Do you need brain breaks, or would you rather work alone? Do you need to talk in a group? Do you need to sit by a friend because you don't feel comfortable in this class? Do you need would you rather sit in the front so you can focus and you don't have all the distractions of the people in front of you? Or would you rather sit in the back because you're so stressed out that all these people are watching you constantly? These are all things that, especially as teenagers, we feel and we focus on every day. And it really can take away from learning when you're sitting there the entire time and you're like, wow, someone is staring at me. What if I'm slouching weird? What if I'm sitting weird? What if I drop my pencil? I drop my pencil. Now I can't pick up my pencil. And it really is distracting, and it's something that I feel like we all could work on together. Every student, every person, every teacher, every board member, every leader is working on bettering mental health and making it more of a normalized topic so that we can get down to the way to make everyone feel comfortable and basically their second home. So.
All right, our third roundtable topic was extracurriculars. And so with this, we found that a lot of students want more extracurriculars that are less competitive. So a sport, for say, but that you don't have to compete. So, for example, we'll do swimming, where a group of students could swim and they could do our practices as normal, but they don't have to go to the meet and compete. And with anxiety becoming a big thing, that could help, and we get more students involved, and we're getting students to exercise and be healthy, but not having to put the stress on them to compete. Also, more activities like chess club or academic-based extracurriculars. Students want to see that, and they want to see more options. And I know we do have a lot of options, but we're finding a lot of students want less competitive sports. So where they still have the option, like all of our sports would be the same, but there's also the option to play volleyball for fun, or to play football for fun, and not have to go out and tackle people or not have to go out and have that meet every Thursday night.
Yeah, we also talked about how extracurriculars can be restrictive based on religion. A lot of our students take religious classes 6 days a week, and you can't compete with sports and go to that while you're taking those classes. And I don't remember quite correct. I believe it was Fridays is the one day off they have, or maybe it was Saturdays. And making sure that we can offer like an open gym, one Friday's volleyball, one Friday's basketball, and we have this time for our students to come and they could play against each other, or they could play open gym and get a bunch of students together. Like, for instance, I'm on dance team, but I would love to go swim every once in a while. That sounds like fun. So getting our students together in a less pressurized and stressful environment to just have fun together, and I think doing that once a week would be very beneficial.
Our fourth and final round topic was the classroom experience. And so from this, we heard that students want a classroom to feel like home. And who doesn't? Who doesn't want the place that you are at for your majority of your day? You're there first thing in the morning till at night to feel like a home, right? That it is your home. And so with that, we found flexible seating to be a huge thing. And as someone who cannot sit in a chair regularly, if you know me, you know I don't sit like a normal person. I can't. Flexible seating is my saving grace. Whether that be a standing desk or a wobbly chair or even the bands that you put on the bottom of your seat that I can fidget with my feet, that has saved me constantly. And I know it has been for so many other students. So being able to see that increase in flexible seating and that diversity in the classroom, that is what students want. And that is what helps school feel like a second home. We also found that students want it to feel more decorated and colorful, whether that be Christmas lights or fairy lights or just different posters up on the wall, not that scary like movie that you see in the movies.
White room.
Yep, like the detention with like all the desks lined up and like the whiteboard, like you're shaking. No, you want it to feel like a home. That's where you're at. That's where you spend your time. So we found that is what students really would like.
A big thing of that is tables over desks. I mentioned it earlier, and it's my big thing. When you're at a table, you can work together, you're facing each other, you feel in a group, whether or not you're fully included or not, and all of those things that only depend on the students to fix. This is one step towards making sure students feel like they have people to talk to, especially when we encourage them in the lessons to talk to one another. Leaving time to talk about the ideas and stuff not only helps you remember it better, and it can help better test scores, but it also will help better that social interaction. So that's just a little bit about that. Students like to be able to move seats. I know we get seating charts, and that's good for subs and stuff, but ideally being able to switch it up and sit by your friends one day, maybe make a new friend, and you don't get to talk to them because you're seated halfway across the classroom. Stuff like that. Yeah, so overall, hearing students have a lot to say about what they want their 7 hours of school to look like. And I feel like not only just getting this group of 19 students, but we could branch out. We want to hear from more. And how can we take these and make them actually happen? We spent a little bit of time at the end talking about, okay, we love these ideas. How can we actually start them today? The big one we talked about, which is my favorite, is quite literally starting them today. You want better social interaction, go talk to the student you haven't met before. You want a more equalized feeling with your teachers, go say, how are you doing today? How was your weekend? How are all these papers you're grading? How are the essays that we all just wrote and you're reading all of them? Talking and breaking down the barriers, because yes, they're your teacher, but they also can be a friend, and they also need the support that students.
And we're all humans. I think we can just add that. We are all human. Every single one of us in this room, whether it be anywhere we go, we're all human. So.
And implementing this stuff that students would would only help boost productivity. So that's our little spiel for today.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments? Mr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Wonderful report, dynamic. A question about the mental health. I'm a student at the high school, and I apologize if I am not aware of this, but if I wish to talk to a peer, because sometimes I don't want to talk to an adult. It's like talking to somebody who doesn't really care. Although all the teachers and adults at our schools do care. Is there a way that I could reach out to other peers if I have something I want to talk about? Do you have some kind of a peer counseling arrangement?
I think we do have a peer counseling system. I know we did last year. However, I do think it is very poorly advertised, and that
Okay.
is something that we can work on to help improve the advertisement and help grow that, because I do remember it did exist last year. I don't know about this year, which means that that's our job to help get that going, because I think that would be very beneficial
Good.
to have that peer counseling.
Sure would. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Other board members, questions or comments?
This is a lot. I wrote a lot of notes, so I'll process and think about everything you've said. I appreciate the ideas about flexibility and personalization and student choice, right? We've talked a lot about student-centered learning, but you're also talking about choice, which is nice. I love hearing your ideas on extracurriculars, and I really appreciate your kind of call or your charge to us that every leader, every person should be thinking about and concerned about mental health. So thank you for saying that so sort of directly to us. Wow, Mr. Benty, this is a lot of ideas. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Thank you. Appreciate it. Before you go, though, I have a couple questions for you. So you did mention some action items that students can start right away. Do you have a plan, if you will, and maybe you've already done it, where you meet with the high school and the ALC leadership to now have these conversations of what can be done and what can't be done, and trying to find those little wins before you have a huge win kind of thing?
Yes, so I've had several conversations with Mr. Olson, our principal, about what we've talked about. Because to you, we bring the stuff that really relates to you. Sometimes we talk about things that you guys really have no control over, so it's not in everyone's benefit to sit here and talk about it. So I've had a lot of conversations with Mr. Olson about things that have been talked about personally with the high school that admin can help look at. We've talked about a lot about some food choice options at the ALC has been a big topic. And we've met and we talked to Mr. Olson. He branched out and reached out to Sodexo and all of that stuff. And I believe it is in works of getting fixed. So we have reached out, and we work on reaching out more and breaking out how we can implement these and working through that. So
Yeah, the action we talked to you about, a lot of these things we are working on or have been worked on, and we come to you after these meetings have happened, but stuff is already in the progress. And again, we don't tell you because it's not your control or it may not relate to you, but a lot of these things we have been taking action over and we have been taking control. And there are a lot of things that are already being fixed after our second meeting. So there's been a lot of action that's happened.
extremely incredible to watch these students be so open and honest about their experience and then take that and run with it and say, you know what, today I'm going to work on this and I'm going to talk to this teacher about this. And it's incredible.
Yes.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, congratulations, and I would just really encourage you that if there is something, obviously, you had 4 items, if you're told no, understand why, and maybe there's an alternative route, right? So don't go away mad. There might be a reason why or whatever, but great stuff, and the more students you can get involved in having feedback, hopefully the better it'll be, so. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
All right, thanks.
excuse
Have
me,
a good-
before you,
Yes.
just one question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. You had indicated you want to expand this. Do you have some plans in place where you're going to engage more students in this process?
Yes, so we've been advertising. We found that one-on-one connections and actually telling someone, hey, I think you should join this works really well. And so me and Sophia have been doing that. We also have other students in our groups who are doing that from the district youth council. And so that's really been our number one way of getting students to actually join.
Good.
But we have posters, we have Schoology messages that go up. There's a lot of advertising done. But yes, we've grown. What was our first meeting? 13-ish, right? Something low. We've grown since our first meeting, and we're continuing to grow.
So what's eventually going to happen is you're going to have a student-centered building rather than an adult-centered building.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful evening. This brings us to item number 6, consider approval of the fiscal year 2022 audit. And we will have an audit presentation. I will entertain a motion to approve the audit, then we'll have the presentation, I guess.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Cavalier.
I'm sure they're really excited to come in and make this presentation after what we've had so far tonight.
We
Thank you, Jerry. I'll pay you afterward. So, before we get started, I just want to take this opportunity to thank my staff, Chris, who's here at the table with us this evening, and Brett, and Kim, and Jill, who may be watching tonight, I'm not sure. You know, the audit, again, was a little bit more work than it was last year. A lot more things that the auditors needed to review. We obviously had a lot more federal dollars that we spent in fiscal year 22, and so that brought around more single audits than we've ever had to deal with in the past. But thankful that the audit is complete, and with us tonight is Matt Mayer, I believe is his last name. He is an audit partner with Bergen KDV, and while he wasn't directly related with our audit, he's here to present the information to you guys tonight. So this is your one chance to ask those questions, if you have any, of the expert in the room. And that's not me. So.
Thanks, Scott. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for the invitation to present this evening. I think Scott set things up well. You received, I'm going to have to aim this any particular place. I'm not having any luck getting the right button. Oh, there we go. I don't know what happened, but okay. All right. The district is responsible each year to prepare financial statements. Scott and Chris and their team are involved in that process, and it is intended that the public have access to those. So at the end of the year, you as board members, the public, the taxpayer understands what the financial position of the school district is and what the results of operations for the year were. Our team at Bergen KDV is charged with coming in to test, examine, and give an opinion on those financial statements so that users of them can be assured that they are a true and accurate picture of the district's financial position. We are providing this year an unmodified opinion, which is the best we can give you. It's in the front of the financial statements on our firm's letterhead, and what it means is that the numbers that we'll be reviewing tonight do represent the results of the 21-22 fiscal school year for Faribault Public Schools, and also the results of operations for that same year ended. I have mentioned about 200 pages of other data in there as well, and there are 4 other reports that you're going to find within that, and I want to go through that a little bit here. All of them are good news for the district, and all of them are a great report card on the finance team's efforts here for the year. The first of those reports is one on government auditing standards, and this has to do with internal control. And internal control at the district is the policies, it's the procedures that you have in place to do 2 things. One is to safeguard your assets to make sure that they're used only for public purposes. And secondly is to ensure accurate financial reporting at the end of the year. And if we have any concerns about the way that you approach that, making sure there's adequate checks and balances, things like that, we will bring that out through this report. We had none for the 21-22 fiscal year. So not only do you have a solid policy and procedure manual in place, but it's being executed and being taken seriously by your team here in the finance department. Next, as Scott mentioned, you received significant federal funds during 2022 fiscal, almost 13 million, actually a little over more than 13 million. And anytime you receive more than 750,000, so you receive 13 or 14 times that, the feds want to make sure you're using those dollars appropriately. And we do a examination of your federal spending, not necessarily the dollars and cents, but how you're spending those dollars and making sure that you're following all the rules regarding those grants. So this year we looked at Title I, we looked at the education stabilization funds, we looked at the coronavirus relief funds that you received, and we also looked at a literacy grant this year as well, and happy to report no findings, and that report will go directly to the feds as well, so they're aware that all of their monies were spent appropriately here at the district during the past fiscal year. Next one up is legal compliance. This is the state auditor making sure that you are following all the rules regarding how a school district should be run here in the state of Minnesota. This has to do with how you're investing and depositing your funds, making sure all your contracting and bidding is on the up and up. There are no conflicts of interest with any members of the board or others within administration and leadership, and again, no findings there. So again, offering 4 different reports. All of them are best we can provide. And again, I think a great report card for not only the district, but specifically your team in finance here that achieve those results for the district for the year. With that, I'd like to dig in on the numbers a little bit and give you a high-level perspective on how the year went for you financially. And the best way to do that, to start out, one of the two metrics that I'm going to have you look at tonight is the budget. And as a school board, you have the governance, the policy responsibility to say, here's what we want to, how we want to spend the dollars, and here is the revenue stream that's going to pay for these dollars, and here is the financial position that we want to have at the end of this fiscal year. And for the 2022 fiscal year, your final amended budget called for about $60 million in revenue, about $60 million in spending, and a small deficit at the end of the year, or use of fund balance of about $300,000. Now, as the year progressed, revenue came in about $1.2 million lower than that amount, and spending was also about $1.2 million lower than that amount, and that was a choice on how to use some of these federal funds. You budgeted for all of them to be used during the year, and about 1.3 of those are going to get carried over into this fiscal year and be used now instead of the year that's under audit. So it really, we recognize the revenue as it is spent, so it had no effect on your fund balance, and your fund balance change for the year was an increase rather than a decrease of $100,000 versus a budgeted amount of $300,000. So you outperformed on your budget, and your fund balance at the end of the year ended up being $400,000 better than what you had anticipated going in to the fiscal year end. I want to talk a little bit about funding. The main funding source for the district is general education aid from the state of Minnesota. And this is on a per pupil basis. And while the increases in the per pupil funding have been steady the last 4 to 6 years, they haven't been significant, and certainly with inflationary increases the last few years have not kept pace in that respect. But you can see there that we've been getting about 2% on a per pupil basis for each of the last several years. So knowing what that number is, and then also understanding what your pupil count is going to drive the financial health of the district over time. And this has been one of the challenges for Faribault schools over the course of the last few years, is the student count and the declining enrollment that you've had here. The first number we look at is resident average daily membership. And these are public school students that live within the district boundaries, whether they attend here or not. And that means that we're not counting homeschooled children, we're not counting private school or parochial students. These are only public school students, whether they attend here or not. And that number has declined fairly significantly from about 4,600, almost 4,700 5 years ago, to only about 4,300 here in 2022. Now that's the first step. But there is a factor here in Minnesota called open enrollment as well. And in Minnesota, students that can leave their home district to attend another neighboring district. At the same time, you have the opportunity to attract non-residents into the Faribault schools. And historically here at Faribault, that has been a net loss, and a fairly significant net loss for you over time. For the 2021-22 school year, you lost 16 students to open enrollment for every one student that you brought in, about a 16-to-1 ratio on the losses there. And that sounds significant, and it is, but things actually have been getting better. A year ago, it was 18-to-1. 2 years ago, it was 22-to-1. So you are at least closing that gap a little bit. But as you can see here, about 1,200 students were lost versus the 73 that came in regarding open enrollment. And when we're talking about per pupil funding, and we're talking about year-over-year enrollment losses like you've seen, that puts significant challenges on your revenue stream and keeping the level of financial health here at the district year over year. Now, when we look at your revenue from 2021 to 2022, it was up fairly significantly, about 7.7%, and that's a good solid number even in these inflationary times. But one thing that you're going to notice, and if you look at that second line there, that state source of funding, which is the main source of funding, which is about 2/3 of your funding in the general fund, has been flat and actually declining over the course of the last 5 years. And in fact, you received less state funding in 2022 in real dollars, $400,000 less than you received 5 years ago in 2018. And you ask, how can that be? It's because of the significant student enrollment drops that you've had, about 500 students over the course of the last 5 years, and multiplying that by the dollars that we saw there earlier on a per pupil basis, you can see your funding has been flat when it comes to state funding. a nice bump here, a one-time increase with some of the coronavirus funds, the education stabilization funds from the federal government. That's $4 million increase on that other revenue line, and that's where the gains were this year. And the local taxpayers certainly made a significant contribution as well here in 2021 to 2022, about 6.2 versus 7.6 million overall. So 7.7 overall, a lot of that federal money that's going to be one-time money. And again, one thing to be watchful for is that state line item. That's a number that's going to be, it's been flat, and depending on where your enrollment lies, that could continue to further decline or be a non-factor when it comes to trying to look for new revenue sources. Now, when we look at where the dollars are being spent, we break it into 10 different categories. We're talking about regular instruction and special education instruction being the main categories. But we also look at things like transportation, which is considered to be pupil support, sites and buildings, which is your equipment and custodial costs, your maintenance costs, things like that. And also another factor is administration and district support. And that is a relatively low number, actually, compared to statewide averages here at Faribault. Between administration and district support, which would represent pretty much the team that works out of this building, superintendent's office, the finance, HR, all of those folks, that's about 6% of your overall budget. A typical district in the state of Minnesota spends about 9% in those categories, to give you some perspective. And another challenge that your district has is that you have a higher level population or demographic when it comes to special ed. You're spending about 21% of your general fund budget on special education costs. 19% is the state average, so about 2%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but remember we talked about a $60 million budget, and that puts you well into seven figures when it comes to your additional special education costs over and above a typical district your size. I'm going to jump ahead a couple of slides here, so I don't know if I'm driving or someone's helping me with this, but let's go ahead a couple more and go right there. Let's put it all together. And the other metric that I want to talk to you about tonight is fund balance. And that is a level of financial health that you as the governing body or the school board have set through policy. And you have established a fund balance at 9.5% of your budgeted expenditures. That means what you want to have left in the rainy day fund at the end of the school year should be 9.5% of what you spend on a typical year's budget. And if you do the math on where you landed fund balance wise, you have a total fund balance at the end of the year of about $7.5 million. And that ends up being right around 11%. So you're right in line, a little bit above right now your fund balance policy, which is showing great fiscal responsibility. Again, with some of the headwinds that you've been facing on enrollment losses, to maintain fund balance in that range and according to policy, and being able to maintain that level of financial health. Again, kudos to the district when it comes to that. Again, federal funding this year played a big role in that, so we're appreciative of that, and we have to put long-term plans in place for the future. But for this year, you're ending in a place that's within the parameters that you've set, and I would say from the second metric standpoint that you are financially healthy when it comes to your financial position, and that's in relation to the fund balance policy that you've set for yourself. So the two metrics tonight, I think we're giving you a great report on as well, not only with our audit reports, but the fact that the budget was complied almost to the dollar. Within fractions of a percentage point, you landed where you thought you were going to from a budget perspective, and from a fund balance or financial health perspective, you are landing right where you want to as well, right where that fund balance policy tells you you should. The two other screens I want to look at, the next one up, is the food service fund. That fund had some significant changes the last couple of years with its delivery model, with the challenges with the pandemic, and a lot of new funding coming from the feds related to that. So that fund has rebuilt a fund balance. It's a very healthy position to end the year with about $1.6 million in reserve, and that's going to set you up well as we get back to hopefully our new normal here regarding food service delivery. So a good report for the food service fund. And then finally, the last screen is the Community Service Fund. And this fund is a conglomeration of a lot of different programs. This is all your community education classes. This is the ECFE, the early childhood, adult basic education, school readiness, all go into this particular fund. And the best way to look at it is the individual fund balance for each of those. You can see that we have it split out there in the bottom portion of the screen. You can see that they are all positive. and that means that the revenue stream for each of those different programs is sufficient to cover the cost of providing those services, and you do have a nice rainy day fund in each of those programs at the end of the 2021-2022 school year to move forward with. So I think, again, a good report for community service as well. So again, thanks for the invitation to present. Our thanks for the chance to work with you and your team. And I'm happy to provide, I think, a very good audit report for you to accept for the 21-22 fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions or comments? None?
Thank you. That was great. I'm wondering if maybe you could repeat in maybe simplified language about whether or not our district did well on our audit. And if you could talk to us a little bit about putting that in context with other districts or average districts like you did with the percentages. I heard that we did well, but I'm wondering if you could just say it out loud again for us.
Well, let me put it in this context. I talked about two metrics regarding your financial health, and I think that's one thing, and then the audit results, I think, are another. So the audit results, giving you 4 different reports. This is not only on whether the numbers are accurate and also that you use the funds appropriately, and if we had concerns, it would be very direct. We would have a modification to those reports. We would tell you what was wrong, and there were no modifications to any of the 4 reports that we offered. So unmodified there, I think a good report there.
Thank you.
And then secondly, just to echo my thoughts on financial position and financial health, really it comes down to just those 2 things. One is financial health, and that's your fund balance policy. And what we want to make sure is that you are monitoring that and that you are putting budgets together each year that respond and react to that. So as you get together and start putting the budget together, you're already thinking about that for the 23-24 school year, the levy that goes along with that. We're always 18 months ahead of the time, it seems. You need to not only just put a budget together in a vacuum and say that's what we think is going to come in for revenue and that's the expenditures we're going to authorize, but you want to understand what's that going to do to our financial health, and then ask these guys, what is our fund balance going to be if we execute on that budget, and make sure that's in line with that policy that you've established for yourself. So at the end of the year, there's no surprises, and then you can move forward knowing that your financial health is where you want it to be. And my report tonight for the 21-22 year says that your budget was executed within a fraction of a percent of what you expected. So again, no surprises there. And your financial health is right in line with that policy that you said, maybe a fraction of a point or 2 above it even. So I think, again, from any metric that you're using there, a successful year financially for the district.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cavalier. Other questions, board members? Ms. Lechtenberg?
Hi. I was wondering if you could clarify a little bit. You talked about how our administrative budget was 4%, and other districts like ours are around 9%.
Yeah, I wonder if we could get that slide back up.
I think it's slide 12.
Do it. Appreciate that.
And what I'm wondering is that comparable to other school districts that have the same amount of students that we have, or is it the big 9, or?
Yeah, there's the slide. Thank you for that. Now, there are 2 numbers there. It's the 1 o'clock and the 2 o'clock maybe, or the 12 o'clock and the 1 o'clock on the chart, the green and the red pieces of the pie there. Green is administration, and that would be the office of the superintendent. Principals go into that category as well. And that number for the year was 4%. Mm-hmm. And then the other number that I'm going to put in with that is district support, and that's the finance team. Some IT costs go into that, and that's about 2% of the budget overall. So combined, those 2 end up being about 6%, and the statewide averages are on about 9%. And to get the statewide averages, they accumulate all of the expenditures from all the districts, so it is pretty much on a pro rata basis, and you're comparing yourselves to the largest districts, Hennepin's and Minneapolis's, to the smallest of charter schools, which are going to have higher, based on economies of scale, costs there. So I think it's a good metric to look at. It's not something I would get necessarily too hung up on, but okay. I think it gives you some perspective anyway. And with the state being at 9, it seems to me that number is right in line, or at least you're getting more dollars directly to the classroom and to programming as opposed to the administrative piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lechtenberg. Other questions or comments, board members? Okay, before you leave, Mr. Mayor, I just want to follow up on both Ms. Cavalier and Ms. Lechtenberg's questions in your comments. Bergen KDV is a pretty sizable accounting firm. Do you have any guess roughly how many different school districts in Minnesota that you audit?
Yeah, we audit about 70 to 80 school districts.
Okay, so pretty sizable.
That's about 20% of the states.
Okay, thank you. And of those 70 or 80, do you have any rough guesstimate what percentage would fall in the audit results like ours in terms of no major findings and stuff like that? Are we in the top 25%? Are we in the top 10%, the top 5%? I mean, is this the norm, if you will?
I would be speculating, but I would give yourself a pat on the back for the report that you got tonight. I think very often we have a finding or two, whether it be severe related to segregation of accounting duties or mistakes that we find in the financials, or a housekeeping issue with the legal compliance thing. Typically, we run across 1 or 2 findings a year. And if you do get one in subsequent years, I don't want you to beat yourself up about that. But I think, again, it is something to celebrate and something to acknowledge.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And the reason I ask that is because, as a board, and I'm sure all boards all over try to be transparent, but I think this board really does try to pride itself on transparency. In making sure that our funds are spent wisely and having the right leadership in place, and to have no major findings and really no minor findings and hear this kind of report. None of us are experts in school finance other than really the three of you, and school finance is extremely complicated. But if any taxpayer out there says that we are not doing a good job of spending taxpayer money, this audit would obviously push back on that in terms of how things are spent, the tracking of them, and then also in terms of administration costs versus state averages. I think being below the state average is a plus there. So I just thank you very much, and really a big thank you to Scott and Chris. And Scott, you mentioned others on your team, but it's a big deal, and audits can be scary things, right? Because you don't know what you're going to find, but I think it's an important thing, and thank you very much for all your efforts. And Scott and Chris, thank you to your team. So
thanks, Chad, and just real quick, I want to thank Matt and Nancy and Carolyn and Sam and all these people that are behind the scenes helping us with our audit this year too. And for the most part, they did a great job working with Chris and I. Occasionally, they might drive us a little bit crazy, but I think that's part of what auditors are trained to do in school. So, but I just want to thank the Bergen KDV as a whole for what they did and all the work they put into it this year.
thank you. Mr. Robichaud, you had a question or a comment?
Just a comment. I think the one graph that I found interesting is the amount of percentage increase that the state has afforded school districts over the last several years. I didn't see anything over there. It was over 3%. And I'd like to know what other business operates on a 2% revenue in this economy. And, people, it's very evident. We're not getting the funding we need to maintain the kinds of programs. Fortunately, this board has taken a position that, funding for students is the top priority, and will continue to do that, even though the state isn't recognizing that we need additional revenue. So, 2% is not a significant amount of revenue in this day and age. And like I said, I don't know of any business that would operate at a 2% increase revenue. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, this brings us to item 7, school board public comment guidelines.
Mr. Chair, made a motion in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a motion in a second. Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. We had a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Do we have any further discussion regarding this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Once again, thank you for correcting me there. This brings us to item 7, school board public comment guidelines. We do have potentially 3. I don't know. It looks like one person might have left. So I will quick read this and then ask those people that registered to speak to come on up. School board public comment guidelines. This is an opportunity for residents, business and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Faribault Public School District to address the board. You must sign up in person at the board meeting and address the board from the podium. Members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Please state your reason for addressing the board. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. Public comment is not available at work sessions, closed sessions, or special board meetings of the school board. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student or staff matters, even without naming them in open session. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific student, staff, or to a specific matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Anyone interested in making a public comment will be asked to complete an information card before the meeting starts, providing their name, address, and topic for their comment. All comments must conform to the school board policy 206, which is available for review on the district website at www.faribault.k12.mn.us. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments on one specific topic. Each topic will have a total of 15 minutes allowed for comments. With that said, I ask that Ms. Kira Anderson please come forward and speak on your topic. And I would just ask you to sign there, I guess, and Mr. Bellingham, our vice chair, will keep you to the 3-minute mark.
All right. You want me to sign it first? Or?
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
We do encourage public comment, and it usually does not start at 6:30, an hour in, so I apologize for people that
It was
are
interesting
waiting.
to listen to.
So,
My name is Kira Anderson, and I am a parent of 3 children in the district. I have a 8th grader who is 13, a 7th grader who is 12, and a 3rd grader who is 8 at Jefferson and the middle school. I was a student myself in the Faribault Public Schools, and I participated in music throughout my entire school time here at Faribault. I'm speaking on behalf of the music program here at our district because I think it is a valuable program that we lift up. Our mission statement says, behind you, Faribault Public Schools provides a high quality and equitable education that nurtures, inspires, challenges, and empowers all students to engage and grow as learners and citizens. My student, who is in 3rd grade at Jefferson Elementary, is not receiving an equitable education from the music curriculum that is offered at the school district. This was made on an administrative decision last year with the budget cuts, and currently the Jefferson students receive 15 minutes of music education every 6 weeks. Roosevelt and Lincoln made the same cuts, but the next day turned around and rehired for those positions. Roosevelt and Lincoln received 55 minutes a week for their music education. Our buzzword in all of society is equitable. The Faribault district has worked super hard to promote education across the board. Pitting schools against each other for the programs that they offered is unacceptable. The reason I'm speaking to you tonight is because I believe in the Faribault Public Schools. The teachers that do an amazing job. I have children who are on the accelerated programs. I have children who need help. You support both of those spectrums. I also believe that as my 3rd grader sits in her classroom, 90% of her time is test score driven. Taking music education away from our kids does not develop both sides of their brain. And as we saw tonight, it is so important to create opportunities that inspire, challenge, and empower all levels of our children's education. That is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Roger Steinkamp.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to come and talk here. You know, the subbing season has started, and I've had the privilege of going into some of your schools already. I haven't gotten the courage up yet to do band, chorus, or orchestra. I'm an ag teacher. But anyway, you know, our children need a safe, healthy learning environment, fully funded schools, and strong supportive communities. I think we all agree on that. But they don't need protection against threats that really don't exist. And CRT just keeps coming back time and again. And, you know, anyone, if you believe, number one, CRT isn't being taught here. Number two, if you are concerned about your child's curriculum, there's nothing stopping you from asking the teacher to see it or the school. And so I don't see where we get a lot of this stuff from. You know, we like to point at it's some deep state conspiracy. Well, the Department of Education, every 10 years, you know, reviews it, and they have 4 core disciplines: civics and government, economics, geography, and the U.S. and world history. And this time around, a committee of 38 people from across the state that represent parents, businesses, school boards, and the general public came together to make recommendations to the department and to include ethnic studies across the state. And Faribault is a wonderful community for this. You have such diversity here. We should be celebrating rather than being afraid of it. You know, spooky season is upon us, but we don't need to be afraid. And in fact, like 78% of teachers surveyed across the states said that this concern or anti-CRT frenzy is actually interfering with a productive and necessary discussion regarding race in America. And, you know, a similar survey to parents said they're concerned about having diversity taught. And it got me thinking when I moved to Faribault 20 years ago. I'm a nut on history, and I know some candidates are saying, oh, well, we're looking ahead, we don't look back. Well, it pays to look back, believe me. I had to look back in my own family history. I look back in the history of where they came from, and the history of who we are really determines who we are today and affects our attitudes. I had to look at myself and figure that out. And so anyway, make a long story short, maybe we should look at the history of Faribault. Look back in the 1920s and what was going on here. What we're experiencing is nothing new. You know, we had the KKK here. It was very strong. Roughly half the families are members.
Mr. Steinkamp, are you close to wrapping up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One more sentence. And so I think that, you know, it pays to stop and think about it. And I always find that the best way to think, I have the power in my finger. I take this thing and I turn it off. Listen to yourself. We know what's right. We know what it takes to make a good community. And I see it every day in my community. I just live over here. We take care of each other.
Thank you, Mr. Steinkamp. Our third comment is from Miss Sarah Coulter, but I don't believe she had to leave? Okay, thank you. So that wraps up our community comment. Once again, thank you to the folks that spoke to us. This brings us to item number 8, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Ms. Steves. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item number 9, retirements. Consider approval of retirement of Miss Kelly Zwagerman of 36 years of service. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any further discussion?
Well, Mr. Chair, first of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Zwagerman for her 36 years of service in the Faribault Public Schools. I can proudly say that she made such a direct impact on so many of our students, especially in the journalism field. Back in the day, shows my age here, I guess, when the Echo was still going, the newspaper here, absolutely, I believe it won state awards. It was phenomenal, and I truly believe that her work and her influence are what made people such as my daughter a journalist, and a very good one. So again, just to making a real positive influence on our kids, and thank you, Kelly, for all the work you've done. And quite talented being able to teach high school students and then move to middle school as well. So, so thank you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Any other thoughts or comments? I would just like to follow up on your comments there, Mr. Bellingham. Just a big thank you to Ms. Wagerman. 36 years here in Faribault Public Schools is a long, long time. And we wish her nothing but the absolute best in her next chapter and whatever that may be. So we do have a motion and we do have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. This brings us to item 10, finance. The finance item 10A is the minutes from our September 19th meeting. One second here. Should that be the September 19th meeting? Or should that be the October?
We just had the October, so.
Yeah.
That's the minutes from September.
This is correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, from our report. Okay, thank you. That's there in front of everybody. The next item is 10B, the budget. Mr. Gertis, you want to come forward and do 10B1 and 10B2, please?
Good evening again. So we'll talk a little bit about the October enrollment counts. So as you heard last month, we were talking about where we're at as we start the school year. I mentioned that it was a little early yet to be having too much solid data. But as we moved here now and we've crossed October 1st and we're putting all the pieces to the puzzle here, if you look at the numbers across the top, you can see that we're right now projecting a final count based on just 2 months worth of data of 3,260 kids. If you look at our budget, for those of you that can't remember that far back, we budgeted for 3,145. So the difference there is 115 ahead of our budget. Now, I do want to point out that there was a change in our ADM structure as it relates to PSEO. And so while I don't have those official numbers yet from the fall counts, I should have them shortly, I'm estimating that to be roughly 40 ADM. So if you take 40 ADM off of the 115 that we're ahead, we're still ahead of budget by at least 75 students, which is good news moving into the years that our drop, it was not as big as what our number, our budgeted number was, and based on our projections. So that's kind of where we're at for the end of October. This number will, obviously it's early in the year, and we'll hone this number in more over time. But it's a good place is where we're at right now. Some additional good news. If we move down into the comparative financials, again, not a lot to share on the top. Our utilities kind of are falling into place where they usually are, right? A little bit higher than they were last year based on the increases and like everything else, right, across the spectrum. If we move down to the bottom, we talk a little bit about the self-insurance account. And you can see there that, we started out the year in a hole, remembering that we don't recognize revenue evenly across the entire school year. But as you look at the September numbers, 3 months into the school year, we're ahead by $133,000. So we're heading off on a good track in the self-insurance account as well. Last year, we didn't talk about it at the audit meeting, but if you dig into those financial statements a little bit, you'll see that last year we finished $328,000 ahead. So we increased our fund balance in our self-insurance account last year by $328,000. So a sizable increase over the year before, which was just $26,000. So. And the last report that I want to share right at this point in time is our investment report. So I mentioned at the end of our September meeting that, now that the audit is pretty much wrapping up, we're getting back on track with our billing and our cleaning up last year's for revenue accruals. So again, not a big change here, August to September, but there will be a jump next year next month in October as we're catching up and bringing in some more cash from the end of 22 and the first part of 23. So, any questions on any of that?
Board members, questions or comments? Mr. Olson?
Yeah, with the health insurance, do we have reinsurance to really cover,
Yep.
just in case?
Yes, our reinsurance policy sits at $150,000.
Mr. Gertis, just to follow up on that, there's individual reinsurance and then there's accumulative. Is that correct? Or aggregate, I think they call it.
I'm not
Maybe
sure
it's
about
just
the aggregate.
maybe it's
I
just
think
the individual.
It's just individual, so it's per person per year.
So, Mr. Olson, if there was a catastrophic event for an individual, right, of heart transplant or $1 million set of twins or whatever that is, that's where that reinsurance would kick in.
Right. And last year we only had one person that broke that cap, one individual, and so far this year we're not on track to have any yet.
Now, do we have health programs within our district, like healthy living and, with our staff?
Yes, we do have those programs through our carriers in our self-insurance account. I can't speak exactly to what they all are, but there's a lot of different programs, some around mental health, some around gym benefits, and kind of the traditional ones. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Olson. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mr. Gertis. This brings us to 12B3, which is Resolution 23-16, the accepting of gifts and donations. The first one on here is Abu Bakris Sadiq Islamic Center, $1,000 for the Little Falcons program, and also $1,000 for Falcon hijabs. Next item is Adam Karen, two new picnic tables for the Faribault Area Learning Center. Next is donations for the Nest at the Faribault High School. These next items are all for the Nest. Our Savior's Lutheran Church, $250 and also $138.43. Jeannie Johnson, clothing and school supplies. Ann Weber, 2 bags of clothing. Catherine Fernandez, box of clothing. An anonymous $100 donation. So with that said, I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 23-16.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg and a second by Ms. Steves. Any further comment or discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Are we
Olson.
getting donations, or are we asking for our new hockey team? What's the status of that?
Mr. Benty, you want to take that? I'm unaware of the co-op, the girls co-op with Burnsville? Girls hockey co-op?
It must be, right?
Yeah, that's what we approved last month.
Right, yeah.
Are you asking about for the uniforms and the transportation?
Just anything to get a new team started in our cooperative. It takes money for uniforms and transportation and.
We haven't seen any donations come through. I will have to talk to Mr. Kleiner, our activities director, to see if he's had any come in. I know he had some money budgeted for this year for hockey, and I know he had talked to the board about what a budget would potentially look like with uniforms, a first-year budget versus an ongoing budget. So I can check with him.
Thank you. And just once again, thank you to all the organizations and members of the community for their continued support through the last month and whatnot. So, any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Gary Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item 10C1, consider approval of the Roosevelt Elementary HVAC bid request. Mr. Smith, would you like to come forward? And I will, in case there's any questions, I will entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Steves. Mr. Smith is here, so if anybody has any questions, or Mr. Smith, if you'd like to add anything, I think you did a nice job of laying it out, but you want to just briefly touch on what's going on here?
Sure. So we had a chiller go out at Roosevelt last spring. Ended up being, we had to manufacture a part for it to get us through the summer. The company that installed it will not guarantee that it will hold, could fail at any time. So we moved that up the LTFM list. In talking with our architects, they said there was some cost savings to also move up our boiler project at Roosevelt. So I'm asking to get bids for both projects.
So just to confirm, all we're doing here is looking for approval to actually go out for the bid process. Okay, thank you. Board members, Mr. Olson?
Yeah, what's the age of the boiler there?
I believe it was installed 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. So not too old.
Not too old. I thought it would be older.
There was a chiller replacement. I went back into
But the
the
boiler,
blueprints.
but
The
that's
boilers
not the
are
original.
Boilers are original, as far as I'm.
Yeah, I mean, what's the age of the boiler? Was it that thing was built in 95, 96?
It opened in 1998. Roosevelt did, when
Oh,
students
okay.
came in, yes.
So that's the original, okay.
Yep.
Are we getting kind of energy rebates?
Yes, we'll have high efficiency boilers, and the chillers will also be high.
Okay.
Yeah, we should be getting some back from Excel.
Other questions? Mr. Smith, do you put this out for bid, or does the architect firm, how does that work?
The architect writes up
They put it out,
the specs and all that stuff, and then we advertise it.
and then anybody can bid on it that's in that marketplace, so, okay. Okay, yes.
The installation, when?
Boilers would be installed this coming summer. The chiller, found out a week ago, we got about a 40-week lead time, maybe 42. So we're trying to phase that in where we can still run the old one during the summer. Hopefully it gets us through, and then install the new chiller, hopefully the fall. Maybe get lucky and the lead times improve and get it all done in the summer.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we do have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Steves. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Appreciate the information. This brings us to item 10C2, consider approval of the RFI for cybersecurity insurance. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Cavalier and a second by Mr. Bellingham. Mr. Benty, would you like to talk about this, or Mr. Gertis add a little more to this? I don't see, Casey's not here? No.
Casey couldn't be here this evening, so I'll mention just a little bit. Going back last December, our cybersecurity insurance runs on an annual year, calendar year, so January through December. So last year, I received a call, it was the 2 days before January 1st, that our policy was gonna go up by about $20-some thousand, so about 300%. And we had 2 days to sign on. And so kind of what we're trying to do here a little bit is to see what else is kind of out there in the marketplace. Try and find a vendor that will maybe work with us a little bit more proactively throughout the year and help us do some of those things that it takes to maybe not see as much of an increase on an annual basis, help us enhance our some of the things that we need to do in terms of security here in the district. As you guys are well aware, we don't have a network engineer on staff, right, to do some of those things. So bringing in those resources to help us with that and mitigate some of these larger increases, as well as bringing additional security measures to our infrastructure.
And I'll just add on, we have added quite a bit of security on our side, pieces that, you know, the two-step authentication on all of our devices. So we've added a lot of the stuff throughout the year, but we just kind of got hit with it, like, you should have already done this, but they never told us to do it, so.
Yes, Mr. Olson.
Yeah. Do we need it and can we afford it?
Which piece, Mr. Olson, would you be referring, the insurance or the additional things to?
Well, do we need, 10 years ago, we didn't have it.
Right.
5 years ago, I don't think we had it. But
I think we've had cybersecurity insurance for five years. The question, do we need it? Absolutely. We need to have those insurances. I don't think you can have a day go by when there isn't somebody hacked, holding some ransom, probably multiple times per day. Government agencies are a very good target for these people, knowing that our infrastructures might not be as good because of those financial challenges that all government agencies have. So I think we need to definitely have an insurance, and the reason we're trying to do this is to mitigate some of those expenses so it doesn't cost us an arm and a leg, and we don't see 300-400% year over year for that insurance.
Mr. Olson, I think you make valid comments and questions. I can just tell you from the business I work at, 5 years ago, we probably didn't have it. I think we added it 3 or 4 years ago. And I hate to say that we're at the mercy of what these insurance companies are offering, but we're kind of at the mercy of what these insurance companies offer in terms of premiums. And if you look, I don't know that there's a day that goes by that there isn't some type of a municipal or an attack on a municipality, whether that's a local government municipality, whether that's a hospital, whether it's a school district, and then obviously we know that it happens on private businesses and whatnot. And so it's something that I think we all wish we didn't have, but unfortunately I think it's a necessity in this day and age and cost of doing business. It has to be factored in. And so I appreciate your questions and comments, but I would strongly encourage that we do have cybersecurity insurance, especially when we have a lot of information on students, and we have information on somewhere between 560 employees or 500 and 600 employees kind of thing. And so it's a difficult thing, but I think we need it. So, Mr. Olson?
yeah, just like in our own personal lives, are we insurance poor? We got household insurance and car insurance and life insurance. What part of your budget is insurance? And it's, again, we didn't have it 10 years ago. But again, can we afford it? It's just like any insurance. It's just a chance that are you going to get hit by these crooks out there.
Yeah.
I can just say, like, I was hit just this year. So, me personally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I wish I would have had a coverage like this. So, I guess I'm supportive of it.
And Mr. Olson, to put it in perspective, in calendar year 21, we paid just under $8,000 for the insurance. in calendar year 22 that's going to expire here in a couple months. It was just south of $30,000 insurance. So while that's a lot of money, you know, compared to a lot of our other insurances, it's not that bad.
Mr. Robichaud?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Olson, but I'd like to rephrase it to say, can we afford not to have the insurance? From the standpoint of one incident could just be devastating, and I'm sure you know that in the world of business, Mr. Wolf, that it can be devastating if one hacker gets into our system.
And to Chad's point, we do have a lot of confidential information on kids, on staff. Our credit card operations are moving more and more to online platforms that can be hacked. All of our accounting systems are online. Our SMS is all online, so I think it's pretty important.
Ms. Kevin?
Are either of you able to explain exactly what the insurance does for us? Do they provide attorneys or people who work through the impact of a cybersecurity issue, or do they cover our costs if someone were to be a victim of a cybersecurity breach at our school, or do they cover the costs of the employees in our district who have to do the work? Do you understand what I'm saying? Exactly what is the insurance for?
Right. It's a little bit of all of that.
Okay.
Courtney, there's a deductible just like any other. There's a maximum policy threshold, right? But they do provide, I don't know so much of the attorneys, even though there's probably some obviously attorney costs, but it's more of the networking side of that to try and rebuild infrastructures. All the costs to rebuild if we have to start from scratch, or you know, whatever that's like, is to try and bring us back whole. Like any insurance, will it cover 100%? Absolutely not. But it's a step to get us there.
Ms. Cavalier, I can't speak to the district's insurance from seeing our insurance policy within the last 3 weeks. The other thing it does is if it happened at 11 o'clock at night, essentially they're running triage with their experts to try to get you up and going as fast as possible. And also, if you had to enter a negotiation, they have a negotiation team. Our insurance does anyways. Once again, I can't speak for the school district, but that's typically what it would all involve as well.
Mr. Chair, similar to about that LifeLock, they've advertised every place. Wonder if the board can get a list of what it covers, or how am I going to say this, of limitations and what does it cover? Like Courtney mentioned, attorney's fees, or if we get hit. And
super curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll have that when you go out for RFI. You'll have different proposals, and you can certainly share that with the board.
If you want, Mr. Olson, I could send you a copy of the policy that we currently have in place today. It's 100 and some pages of light reading material. If you would like to.
Could you condense it for this board?
It's under 200.
Let's get 200.
I could get it down to 50 if that helps. Yes, we can do that. I think what I'd rather do though is bring back to the board something of what our policy will look like for calendar year 23, right? Once we have an opportunity to, because it might, it's going to change in a couple months, right? And it might be completely different with a completely different vendor. We don't know that, right?
Mr. Robichaud?
You're asking for a request for information, not a proposal.
That is correct.
Okay, so this is in no way binding anybody other than just find out what they would do.
Finding out what's out there, and then from there, we can go out and get pricing from there once we figure out who.
Do you know other districts that have had the same coverage, like the Big Nine or state of Minnesota? Or?
Everybody has coverage. Who they have coverage with, I couldn't speak to intelligently.
Okay.
Across the Big Nine. I can tell you that our broker that we use only covers us in the Big Nine. They cover a lot of schools, but in the Big Nine, we're the only ones that they cover. The state, I don't know. I'm sure they have a massive policy that I couldn't even speak to in any way, shape, or form, right, with all their systems. But you have to remember too, they also have 6 buildings full of IT people and network engineers behind the scenes that we don't have the luxury of having.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we do have a motion by Ms. Cavalier and a second by Mr. Bellingham. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Gertis. This brings us to item 11, Policy Committee. 11A are the minutes from the October 11th meeting, and we have several board members here that sit on that committee. And would you like to share any thoughts or give any update?
I was going to turn it over to Mrs. Averill because he. No, if you look at the minutes from our October 11th meeting, you can see the ones the first reading, which is 11B, policy 417, 418, and 722. What was discussed there and is presented for first reading there, and if I remember right, it was pretty much MSBA changes. Recommended changes. There was a lot of red and red lines and et cetera with that. So from what I remember, so.
Okay.
Adding of the legal statutes and that sort of thing. It was a small group, but we did review these 3.
Okay, thank you. So for first reading here is policy 417, the chemical use and abuse. Policy 418, drug-free workplace / drug-free school. And policy 722 is the public data and data subject requests. Once again, those are just first reading, and we'll be voting on those next month.
I was just wondering on policy 722, it says that we have a public data practices compliance officer within the district, and I was wondering who that is.
You're looking at him.
All right. Then we're in good hands.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding the first reading of these 3 policies? Okay. That brings us to item 11C, consider approval of the following policies. We will take all of these in one action unless somebody wants to pull one out. But the first one is policy 803.4, reproduction of copyrighted materials. Policy 527 is student use and parking of motor vehicles. Policy 214 is guidelines governing travel and expenses for the school board, travel by the school board members, it looks like. And then policy 203.2, order of the regular school board meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve those 4 policies.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Lechtenberg.
On point number 3, the guidelines governing travel and expenses for school board members. Do we travel somewhere?
Unfortunately, no.
The annual conference, the MSBA annual conference up in Minneapolis is an optional that people can go to if they want to. I guess that's the only one that I'm aware of. I don't know if any
Mr.
board
Chair,
member here.
years ago, there was members went to the national school board, but we're not members of that because MSBA quit.
Pulled their membership.
organization, right.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 12, other matters, and 12A is the consider approval to schedule a.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
believe
did I
there's
miss
a
something?
D- There's a D.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So item 12D, consider approval for the, 11D, I apologize. Consider approval for the rescissions of policy 5 oh my goodness, 500.10.1. You know, we got a lot of policies when we have a couple dots involved in there. Student use and parking of motor vehicles, patrols, inspections, and searches. I will entertain a motion to rescind that policy.
Also move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion on this item?
I believe we're rescinding it, Mr. Chair, thank you. I believe we're rescinding this one because if you look, we just approved policy 527, which basically states all that, and this eliminates this, so.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This now brings us to item 12, other matters, and 12A is to consider approval to schedule a special board meeting to canvass returns of school district election date and time to be determined. Before we actually vote on that, Ms. Averill, you have some information for us?
The special board meeting to canvass the results must be held between November 14th and November 18th.
In our next regular business board meeting is when?
The 21st.
So I'm sorry, you said between the 14th and 18th?
Yes, the special board meeting must be.
And
The next regular board meeting in November is the 21st.
yeah, so I believe we've historically held that, like a 7:30 a.m. meeting or something like that. It's usually pretty brief. That's the only item on the agenda. And so, with that said, I would ask, what are people's availability at a 7:30 the week of November 14th through the 18th is what you said, correct? Would that work for people? I have a couple conflicts on Monday morning on the 14th, but I am available on Tuesday the 15th or the 16th at 7:30 if that would work for people.
You just need a quorum.
We just need a quorum, yep.
I'm good
It'd
with
be
those.
great if we had everybody, but
I'm good with those dates, Mr. Chair.
so the Tuesday the 15th or 16th would work
Yes.
for you?
Yes.
Either of those work for me.
Okay.
Me
Ms.
too.
Lechtenberg, yes? Mr. Olson?
I don't think I even get up by then.
Well,
Take a
I'll,
nap.
I'll do my room service call like I have in the past. Not a problem.
I think I would
Take a nap.
prefer the 16th.
Take a nap.
Wednesday the
Gotta get the
16th?
naps in.
Okay. Ms. Cavalier, how does your schedule look?
I have to be at work before 8 a.m. all of those days, so I'm going to have to be call it on that day, depending on what's going on.
Okay.
So if everybody else can make it, that's perfect.
Okay.
If I can come, I will absolutely come.
Okay. And the 16th is the best for you?
Yep.
Okay. Let's go with 7:30 here, 7:30 a.m. Wednesday, November 16th. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve that meeting taking place here on Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. on November 16th.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Ms. Averill, thank you for the information. Brings us to item 12B, World's Best Workforce A&I Annual Plan. Ms. Corcoran. Wonderful. Welcome, Ms. Onis. Can you tell us, what does A&I stand for?
Achievement and integration.
Thank you.
Otherwise, it gets really long if you type it all out. So Heidi and I are here to do our annual report on World's Best Workforce and our Achievement and Integration Plan. A few years back, MDE combined these plans, and looking ahead, they're also piloting some work that would potentially even reduce and or combine some of the plans that we are working on collectively as a teaching and learning industry team. So, with that, am I driving? Do I need a clicker? Oh, gosh, you're so good. Okay. Go ahead. So one of the things to keep in mind as we are doing World's Best Workforce is we are reporting back, the results going back, and then laying out plans for the 22-23 school year. So this one's doing a little bit of both. But I want to start just anchoring back to our why, and so this comes out of our playbook, and so part of World's Best Workforce connects to this work of elevating each and every student, our every family, and our entire community to achieve their full potential. And you'll also see a variety of data sets. So we've talked a couple times this year already about we're really trying to be intentional about not just using that satellite data, centering the satellite data, making sure that our standardized test scores are in front of us, making sure that they are a measure that we're leaning into and using to measure progress, but that's not the only thing we're looking at. Wanting to make sure we're looking at some of those measures that are more fluid, that we're screening and seeing student success and growth, which is happening through a lot of our FastBridge data. And then we're also making sure that we're getting voice. And you heard that at the start of our meeting as you heard from the students, talking about how are we centering student voices, really building platforms to center family voices as well as our educator voices. So World's Best Workforce has 5 goal areas. This is where we have our Read Well by 3rd grade, our Ready for Kindergarten, our opportunity to close our achievement gaps, making sure all of our students are college and career ready, and that they all graduate from high school. And so you're going to see a great connection to the work we are doing with Cradle to Career. Those World's Best Workforce goals tie beautifully with the Cradle to Career model, and so it's a way that we're trying to work more efficiently and effectively to really have these benchmark areas grow for each and every one of our Falcons. So we're going to start off with our little learners. So our goal is to have all of our students ready for kindergarten. And so we look at that first data set, our FastBridge early reading score, and that is done in the fall of their kindergarten year. So they've had a couple weeks of school figuring out how to walk in line, how to sit in the classroom, and then we want to see what are they starting with, what are the skills they already have as a platform for us to build from. And so our goal was to increase from 45% to 50% of students being ready for kindergarten. And you're going to see in the next slide, you're going to see our trajectory over time. And we did not make our growth target. And even in some conversations with Olivia, some conversations with Rob, conversations with a lot of district leadership, COVID had an impact on our youngest learners too. And I think often we think about it through the lens of students who were in school. But this is also a cohort of students that didn't necessarily access early learning opportunities. And so we're seeing that in the data. And so we're making some intentional steps to be able to address that. Centering social emotional learning is critical for our young learners. Making sure that we're partnering with our families. Making sure that we are also centering those high impact strategies, so our evidence-based practices with the CLSD grant. So that grant has provided us with not only a literacy coach at the early childhood level and every elementary level, but also family literacy specialists as well. And so that's really our goal in really meeting that ready for kindergarten measure. So the next one we're going to dig into is our 3rd graders reading at grade level. And so again, this is one that we jump back up to the MCA level. Because that's the first year that our students are taking that MCA test. So we were at 21.9% in 2021, and so our goal was to increase to 25%, and this is in that reading MCA.
Mr. Olson.
Yeah. When you said 21 to, I mean, that's low.
It is.
And then the 25, that's still low.
Mm-hmm. Right, it is. And nationally, we're seeing that trend. And so that's, I was actually just talking to Jillian and Sophia as they left our meeting this morning, and they actually brought it to me. They're like, did you know that the entire country is seeing data this way? And I said, I knew that, but their point, and I think it's worth repeating, is that, so we keep kind of attacking ourselves and saying this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough. And the thing that I'm left wondering is the system as a whole isn't working for kids. And so how collectively across the region, across the state, and around the country are we changing education to make it fit our needs, which are the students in front of us, rather than continuing to use systems or practices that aren't working for our kids. And this one test isn't everything, but it is a measure that is showing us whether kids are able to read, whether students are able to demonstrate basic proficiencies in math, which then helps us understand if they're on a trajectory for college and career readiness. So you're right, 25%, that's not a big goal. And we have work to do, and that work actually was successful in the last year. So when you think about this trend over time, we saw a dip with COVID, as we would anticipate, and remembering this is a different group of students every year who are tested. But when we look at our students last spring, we did supersede that 25%, and our students, our third graders in reading, were at 28.1 proficient. And so those are students who meet or exceed. I'm really looking forward to not only seeing the FastBridge data, but the MCA data as we have win time coming into our elementary schools this year. And so in addition to win time, which this is our week, we're getting it all up and running, and students are moving around, and our principals, our teachers, our interventionists, Katie Ratfold, there's been some really, really positive conversations and work to make sure our students are getting that targeted support. In addition to that, we have the CLSD grant at our elementaries, like I mentioned, and we're also really working on building out our K-5 language and literacy framework. So you may have heard letters as something that has been coming out from MDE, different things about how do we support students in that science of reading. So we have people participating in that professional learning. That's coming back into our district. So there's a lot of really good things happening across our elementary schools to make sure that we are hitting this target and being able to increase our goal far beyond 25%.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Ultimate goal is 100%, right?
Agreed.
Can we get there, and how soon?
I would love to get there. How soon? I don't have an answer for that. I think about back when it was No Child Left Behind, and part of that legislation, there was a deadline. I don't remember the deadline.
2014, 100% graduation.
There you go. See, you're better at that than. But what we did is we took where are we starting at, where do we need to get to, and what would be the growth number every year. So if we did that again, if we said, you know, we wanted 100% of kids proficient by 2030, let's say, and then we did the math, how much would we need to grow every year? And that's really where that growth goal needs to come into play. But we have a lot of, again, we have a lot of great things happening in our district that we need to elevate, and then we have opportunities that we maybe need to reflect and think about what needs to leave the system and what can we change to make sure our students can.
Because you're looking at 28%. You mentioned 28.1, which is a long ways away from 100. I mean, the old system of grading, that would be not even an F, would it?
Nope, not yet.
Not even, you have to work hard just to get up to an F?
Like I said, I think one of our opportunities this year is really to center that growth data, and so FastBridge, which is our screener, will be something that you'll see a lot more this year than maybe you've seen in the past, especially because we had those gaps in data. But that's, again, we have work to do, and we're doing the work, and I'm really proud of our principals and our teachers who are digging in, and they're getting uncomfortable. We're not just doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We're changing what we're doing and hoping that it's going to benefit our kids.
I have a question as well. As I look at the action steps, I know win time is getting started, and I think it's a great move that all the teachers have been trained in the press. But I'm wondering if there's any data that the other action steps, like the closed grant goals, is there any data? We've had that for, is it 4 or 6 years?
So CLSD, this is year 3, but we had the Circle grant prior to that.
Okay. And is there anything that's showing that that is moving us ahead?
Yeah, so our CLSD grant goals there's 4 of them. So the one that is around evidence-based practices is more connected to coaching. And so are we seeing teachers utilizing coaching? Are we seeing practices changing within the classroom? And so that we absolutely have seen a shift in, where we're now waiting, again, kind of in this year, of how do those evidence-based practices and the learning around that transition to student outcomes in the data. So we need our teachers to learn those practices, then apply the practices to then see the outcome for kids. And then the language and literacy framework and MTSS are all rooted in research. We don't necessarily have specific measures that we're tracking around the effectiveness of that, but again, the correlation between FastBridge proficiency, MCA proficiency, and then some of the anecdotal things we do in classrooms too, like what level of reading students are at, motivation and interest in reading and writing.
Would it be fair to say that Win Time is an example of multi-tiered system of support?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Before we go on, could we just acknowledge the numbers that Tracy just showed us around early reading readiness in our current kindergarten, 36%. Those are students we haven't even yet had really the chance to work with and teach necessarily. Some of them may have been from our preschool programs. These kids, their early learning could have been disrupted in any sort of ways, including even attending preschool. And this means they're coming into our kindergarten at 36%. And I assume early reading FastBridge data doesn't mean can a kindergartner read or not. It's early phonemic awareness, sort of like word aware, very, very basic. And so 100% is an aspirational goal that we believe in children, and we believe all 100% we want to have them above standards or meeting standards. But the realistic situation is that we have 36% of our kindergartners who already are coming in not meeting benchmarks on early reading indicators. So, I mean, it's a sobering, realistic picture of what the kiddos in our school district need. And I also think it's just really, really important for us to remember that this is a really challenging time and a challenging district for teachers to be making significant differences in these percentages over time. So I just really appreciate you showing that, because just can't applaud the work that our elementary teachers do enough to keep working with kiddos to keep moving those reading scores up each year. So thanks for showing us that. That's really, really, really important. I hope everybody sees that. That's really, really, really important information for our district to know. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, if
Yes,
I may,
Mr.
so, alluding to that, so what that data says is 36% are at benchmark or higher.
Yes.
So 64% come in not ready. So I think that helps explain the data.
Yep.
Data as well here that, 64 out of 100 are not ready yet, and that's where we start with them at. Thank you.
The importance of early learning.
Yes.
Can I interrupt again? But can I assume that in our, and maybe you could talk to us about this another day, or maybe Olivia can come, but that we're not going to turn our preschool into like a academic test-driven preschool. Like we're talking about school readiness and social skills, and you said the action steps were all the things that'll stay what?
Yeah, one of the biggest things to center in all of this work is it's not about pushing the expectations down to younger learners.
Yes.
It's really about what are the evidence-based practices that research tells us this is what's going to support students in becoming readers and being successful at the math standards and the pieces that our teachers are committed to each and every day. And so thank you for that clarifier. Yeah, it's our preschools are not gonna turn into kindergartens, and our kindergarten's not gonna turn into first grade, right? And we know that our students can achieve at high levels, and we just have to create the conditions for that to happen. And then we also know that we have a strong system of support that needs to exist, as you have students coming in as multilingual learners, if you have students who maybe haven't had any organized school experience prior to coming to kindergarten. So again, to your point, you have teachers who are navigating a wide range of needs, and that's everything from students coming in not yet ready to students who are ready and now need enrichment opportunities as well. And so that's, again, another element of win time that we're seeing, that we're excited to see some success. So each and every student is growing, and not just students who are not yet at grade level. All right, we'll jump back in. So our next World's Best Workforce goal is really around closing those achievement gaps. And so this is where we look at reading and math data, and we are, again, going back to the MCA 3. And so this is something that is really interesting for us as a district. One of our goals is to close that gap. So again, looking at growth, but wanting to close by 3 percentage points every year. And so that's, again, that's not about bringing anyone down to meet, it's about elevating and accelerating all. And so when you look at this group, we are using student group identifications that MDE provides us with. And so when we look at those student groups, we have our Latinx and our Black population, as well as our EL population, our students who are receiving free and reduced price lunches, as well as our white population. And so when you look at that, over time, you can see that our white population supersedes all of the other student groups in their ability to read at or above grade level. And so this is just a fascinating graph to dig into, and it just truly, in my opinion, it generates more questions than answers. However, it's a conversation that I'm really proud of our administrators of being willing to walk into and to be able to look at how are we making sure each and every student, not just the students that are easy to reach, not just the students who come to school and have all their basic needs met, every student. And so that's why looking at the data in this way just allows us to think about how is our system supporting these kids? How might our system be able to make changes to support these kids? And at the end of the day, we do believe that each and every one of them can read. And so what can we do to make sure that happens?
Mr. Robichaud?
Mr. Chair, thank you. We don't have a large enough indigenous population to measure.
We do
Okay.
not. No, the N is too small, less than 10.
Okay. And what about other ethnic groups?
Yeah, so right now we have looked at 2 or more races and a couple others as possible categories to add, but just because of our current kind of the 30-30-30, that's really where we focused on our Latinx, Black, and white population
Okay.
at this time.
Thank you.
Tracy, are you able to disaggregate the Fast Bridge data for the early kindergartners?
By student group? Yeah, we can.
Do you see the gaps already?
Yes. So then we also look at it for math, and this is across the whole district. So this is every student who has participated in the MCA 3 when we're looking at closing these achievement gaps. And so you're going to see a similar trend as well, that we have our white students performing above the other student groups that are mentioned here. One of the things to elevate is really looking at the growth between 2020 and 2021. So you're going to see every group grew significantly from that pandemic year into a full year back in person. And I think that's worth noting because often the message is, they're at school all day, why aren't they learning? They do. And I think that data point is really an important one because 2019-20, 2020-21, those were our disruption years. And so kids weren't in school all day, every day. And so when they did come back, that growth was significant when you're looking at least 3 or more data, or 3 or more percentage points in every area. And even as you look at some of the larger groups, our black population, it doubled from 6% to 12%. So
Ms.
what our
Corcoran?
teachers do every day matters.
Tell us again, I'm sorry, MCA 3. What does that exactly mean?
That's the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment. So that's what our students take every year in math, reading, and science.
Is there such
in
a
the
thing as
spring.
MCA 2 and MCA 4?
Yes, yep. So the MCA 3 is our current edition. It aligns to the revisions of the standards. So once the standards are put into rule, then they modify the assessment so that the standards and the assessment align.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be on MCA 4 here probably in the next 5 years.
So this, I mean, yeah, thank you, whoever put that slide back up. I mean, things just, it's like they went off a cliff in 2021. I mean, it's unbelievable from 17, 18, or 18, 19 to 2021, the COVID time. And, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm the dumbest person in this room when it comes to education and delivering education. I agree with Mr. Olson that, and yourself, that I don't think anybody's happy with these. At the same token, I agree with other board members that have said our educators, and whether that's teachers and paras and administrators, whoever, they're busting their tails doing what they can. If this was my business as a private business, I would go back to my team and say, we all know the definition of insanity. And it's doing the same thing over and over and thinking we're going to get a different result. And once again, I go back to, I don't know the delivery system and all that goes into it. I know our district is different, as is every district. It's slightly different. And whether that's resources or makeup or parent involvement or community involvement or whatever. We had a community comment person tonight. I believe she said her third grader spends 90% of her classroom time, I think I heard that, 90% of her classroom time on stuff for test scores. And I just say to myself, I don't know if we're doing anything wrong. I know we're putting out there the effort and the heart, but I kind of scratch my head and I go back to when we implemented the ninth grade academy. And here it was a smaller pilot, if you will, that we could test, and we saw some great results. And I don't know if there's any way to, pilot different audiences or different schools or different grade levels. I mean, I have no idea. I can't solve this stuff, right? I mean, anybody can solve this stuff. As you said the other day, Mr. Venti, to somebody, you'd be on the tour, you have sold books, and you'd be speaking all across the country if you could solve this. There's no doubt in the last, I think, week, all 50 states showed a sizable decline in all of these tests, right? Post-COVID and whatnot. But I just ask, I mean, is there anything that we can be doing different in small pilots to find out what really moves the needle somewhere, right? The trampoline effect, where something moves at 2 feet and something moves at 4 feet and something moves at 8 feet. I have no idea. Man, I mean, that is just staggering amongst math in my mind. They're all staggering. And I am absolutely convinced everybody on this board, and I'm absolutely convinced everybody in this room and everybody that works in our district wants nothing but the best for our students and see the most achievement as possible. I go back to, I don't know if there's something else we can be trying to scratch that surface. I have no idea. And that's for you professional educators. I mean, I don't know. And that's everywhere. I get that.
And I think one thing to keep in mind, and I fall victim to this too, is that we all expected an immediate turnaround when kids went back to school. We all expected that all of our test scores would just go back to where they were, and we would continue to grow from there. We have to now accept the fact that we are dealing with a multi-year rebound. Yeah. And we're talking 3 to 5 years to get back to where we were, beyond growing past there. The national report card came out today showing every single state went down. Every single large metropolitan area across the entire United States dropped dramatically in reading and math. So we are dealing with a multi-year rebound, and we are doing some really great things that I know a lot of other schools around us and in the state aren't. They're just trying to get back to normal. We're trying to get back to normal and get better. So
I applaud everybody, and I also want to really hammer home the thought that Ms. Cavalier and Mr. Bellingham talked about. 36% of the youngsters, the youngest of the youngest, are proficient. So that means 64 are not. 64%. That means a lot of extra time probably needs to be spent on those 64% just to get them up. Yeah, I mean.
I think the other piece worth noting is this isn't a one-person solution, and I think that's something that is often, in my opinion, a cautionary tale in education, because our teachers work so hard and they do really great work, and they are one human. And so I think the opportunity here for me, when I look at the data and I think about what we can do and why I connect this World's Best Workforce legislation to Cradle to Career, that's a community approach to making sure that our students have what they need as far as services and education. And so the more involved our community can be in helping us find solutions and resources, the better. And that really then, when we're all working together towards a common goal, it removes the barriers, it removes the divisiveness, because it's about our kids. And I agree, Mr. Olson, this isn't good enough. And I said that to you before. And I also then invite people to come in and see and support the great things that are happening, and then for us to be able to brainstorm and think about how can we do school differently. Because I agree with you, if we continue to do it in the same way, we're going to continue to get the same result. And nobody across the country has it figured out yet. Yeah. And the minute we think we have it figured out, some new variable comes in. Hopefully it's not a pandemic again. I'd appreciate that. If anybody has control over that, thank you. But truly, I think this has to be a community approach. And if it's not, it makes it really hard on the adults in the system. It makes it really hard on the kids in the system. And so again, I'm grateful for the partnerships we do have with our Cradle to Career model. We have work happening to center the data and not to get stuck in that. It is our current reality. Okay, and now what? And so that's really these action steps of really being able to come back to you throughout the year with celebrations and that growth. And growth to me is also smiles on kids' faces, smiles on students' faces, or on staff's faces. It's not just about a measure, but these measures are also something that we need to be paying attention to as well. So we have a few more, and there's some good ones coming. See, I saved Heidi that she's the best, save the best for last. She's got some fun stuff happening. So as we talk about closing these gaps, AVID is a huge, huge aspect of this goal. It creates a common language for students in which kids can move through our system in a way that they're not trying to figure out how to do school. When you think about, like, if you go into a new place and you just have to think about how to survive, how do I get from point A to point B? You're not really thinking about what you're doing, you're just surviving. And so what that common language allows is for kids to really understand learning, and so they can actually get that depth and complexity to the content and be able to transfer that for life, really. And that's the profile of a graduate coming into play, and so AVID brings and elevates far more than just test scores and that proficiency. Our FACES, so our family and community engagement specialists, are unbelievable in this work. They're bringing in family voices, they're bringing in families, they're reaching out to our community. We're hearing from our Somali community, we're hearing from our Latinx community, and they are partners with us as well. They want what's best for their kids. They want their kids to be readers. They want their kids to love school. They want them to go on to higher education or opportunities that give them a career that provides a better life than maybe they have. And so that has been a huge partnership, and then again, really building out that multi-tiered system of support. And a few of us in leadership will be doing some more learning around what that MTSS, which is the term we use in education, but what that multi-tiered system of support can look like, again, as a vehicle to accelerate learning for kids. And then college and career, this is where it starts to get fun, because our work around career pathways is also really making a difference. And so we want to make sure that our kids are accessing those rigorous courses and they're engaging in our career pathways. And because, again, we're kind of in that the 7-period day passed, the pandemic happened, we got a little lost in the why and the how and the what, and now we're recentering that so students know what opportunities are available to them. And so wanting to grow by 3 percentage points each year in making sure that's telling us that students are not only knowing about the opportunities, but they're taking advantage of those opportunities. So you are going to see some growth in our H2C pathway, and we're excited to get MEC up and running, and so those numbers have actually grown. We are over 80 students in our H2C career pathways for the 22-23 school year already. And then one of the things that we are having some conversations about is AP and concurrent enrollment. And with our students, we learned that some of them either don't know it's an option or they don't believe that they're a student who should be taking those classes. And so really starting to change that narrative so they do know that, yes, anyone can participate in those classes and there are systems and structures for you to be successful in that. ACT is another piece that we just look at to see how are our students doing and being able to be college ready. And so again, we're kind of in that 19-20, and so we'd love to see that go up as well in the composite. But also keeping in mind that that is not every kid. Every student does not yet take the ACT. So that's something for us to consider as well as a district. As I said, the career pathways and our work to really market that, communicate that more effectively and efficiently. Avid, and then we do have a great scope of courses that are offered to our students, and so we're grateful for that as well. And then the last one, before we dig into World's Best Workforce, is high school graduation. So we are really looking at this as a whole. We want to get at least 80% of our students graduated. And then we also want to make sure that we don't have any groups of students that are falling behind. And so this is where we kind of take a multi-dimensional look at this data. This is a celebration. We made our goal. So we are 21. So this is where it gets tricky because we do not have graduation data for our seniors who just graduated last spring. So we'll find that out in a few months. So this one is reporting back a year, but we did hit that goal of 80% of our students graduating in the spring of 2021. We were real close, but not quite at meeting our 70% proficiency for all of our student groups as well. But you can see some great progress, again, in that growth area. The one that we are continuing to focus on is that FRP, which is our students who might be experiencing poverty in some way, shape, or form.
Ms. Corcoran, why don't we have the 21-22 data?
So it goes out to the state, and then we get the magical report after they do their statistical analytic cross-checking, and then we get the final report, usually in February.
Yeah.
Okay,
For the
gotcha. Sorry, it seems
previous
weird.
goal.
We're 4 months.
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
It's on the state.
It's
I got
out
it.
of our control.
Thank you.
But, yes, also a good point.
Mr. Rocha?
Mr. Chair, could you define graduation?
Yeah, so when we're looking at this, we first look at the 4-year graduation rate, and so that's what these numbers are pulled from. And then we also look at 5-year and 6-year, and that's part of that overall calculation. So let me say that differently. We look at 4-year, we know that right away. When we get to the 4, 5, 6-year, that's the composite that we get back from the state.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you for
So it's everything. Yep.
I think Cassie came a couple months ago and talked to us about
The different
the
diploma
5 and
options.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of students who will take advantage of that year 5 and year 6 graduation rate, so it's something that we do want as part of our total. Alrighty.
All right. So achievement and integration, we present it every year, but just to give you a little background again, is a separate funding source that we get from the state. It's based on our protected class of students, and that's a whole formula that goes into that. Scott maybe can talk more to that, but, so we get this bucket of money every year, and we have, every 3 years, we create a plan under their guidance on closing that achievement gap for that. So in our past, we're in year 3 now of our current cycle. So this is information from last year. And again, like Tracy said, with graduation rates, it's always a year behind. But we have some really fun and exciting news. And so as we were figuring out, looking at our goals, so we have 3 goals. One of them, the third goal is kind of a required goal by the state. And I'll explain the other 2 goals and why they're so specific at this point too. So our first goal was Faribault Public Schools 4-year graduation rate for Black students will increase from 42.9% in 2019 to our goal of 48% by 2023. And if you look at that, we've surpassed our goal over the last couple of years as well. Now you might ask why it's specific to just our Black students. Achievement integration funding is for all our students. However, they're looking at closing the achievement gap, so they want to see the data that's helping support that. So in our previous year's 3-year cycle, we had just graduation rate of all our students. They wanted it more specific, even getting down to just one race to see growth, what the growth is. And so that's what it is. But the funding itself is meant for all our students. So it's not like that funding is completely targeted towards a group of students. It's for all our students, but we look and report out on a specific group of students to see if it's making a difference. Goal 2, the number of FPS Black secondary students participating in leadership opportunities will increase from 11% in 2019 to 30% in 2023. And so you can see the 2021 year, which was our COVID year, when we weren't in school as much. And you can see that while it increased, we were excited for that. We weren't happy with what, hoping that the increase would become better as we get back into school. And you can see we did that. And I even put so this is both Faribault Middle School and Faribault High School when we calculate this out, because they're considered secondary. But I also on the bottom put what we saw the increases at both levels. So this was exciting. And you might ask, how do we figure this out? We look at students that are involved in Link Crew. We look at students that are involved in student council, any type of leadership role that they have in any of our athletics, our activities that go throughout this. So it takes a little bit of work to go through and to make sure that we're not counting students multiple times, because some of them are involved in multiple activities and organizations. So this is just students counted one time. And so last year, you can see, we definitely surpassed our goal. Overall, we have work to do still. And you saw some students, your student representatives tonight. One of the exciting things was one of our strategies is we have to have strategies with our partners, our Achievement and Integration partners, which are WEM, Northfield, and Tri-City United. And so we have to have a collective, something that our students do together. And so over the last couple of years, COVID disrupted it a little bit, but we got back on track last year, is having student leadership groups from each district come together. And it's been quite amazing. Northfield has had a district student group for a number of years, so they've actually been putting that on for us, but we've learned. And out of that, now came our district student group that Tracy is overseeing as well. And so we actually have a meeting this week coming up to plan our next student summit with all our districts, and our hope is that we have, instead of one just a year, we have at least 2, that we're bringing students from all those districts together. And it's quite amazing. Last year, like the first year when we had it before COVID, the students are doing all the work. The adults are just standing around listening to what the student voices are and what they want for their districts, and collaborating together and seeing some, maybe issues that are in Faribault, but they're seeing it the other schools as well, so they don't feel like it's just us, or collaborating together to come up with plans of, like you heard tonight, what students, how they want change and how they want to see that, and for them to actually help with the work. So that's exciting too as we grow that. And then the third goal, this one is kind of dictated by the state, to have a goal around teachers of BIPOC, teachers of color. And so we started at a 1.47% of teachers of color, and these are just teachers, certified teachers, in 2019. We gained last year, but then we actually surpassed our goal now. Even though it sounds like a 3% goal is pretty low, the national average is that or below now. The average of pre-teachers of color in colleges is about 3%. So we are doing a lot of different efforts, and I think you're going to hear from Zach coming up in just a little bit about our Grow Your Own grants for adults, but we're also working with our own students too and trying to increase that. And working great with MSU Mankato on many different programs and initiatives too to help increase that number in our region.
Ms. Onis, on goal number 1, since we've exceeded our goal by 13% for 2 years in advance, will we up that goal?
So we'll be going through now our next 3-year plan coming up, and so we will take a look and see what they're going to want to see something. I mean, if we're meeting that goal, they're going to see what else can we do now to either increase that, or is there another gap that we need to work with.
Okay, thank you.
So the action steps under achievement integration, so these are everything that falls under the funding and programming right currently in our cycle, be the family and school community partnerships, so some of our faces. AVID is a large part of it. And again, AVID has become so much more than just the elective class it started off with. It is in every kind of one of our everything that we do now, and looking at student achievement and what's happening in classrooms. If you talk to any of the middle school teachers right now, they are on a path. They want to be an AVID demonstration school. So that takes a lot of work though, but they are on that path of they want that. So they're working hard with that. The 9th grade academy and academic seminars, some of the support from there comes out of A&I. Some of our faces, CAS, College Ambition Start Today, is an after-school program and summer program at the high school level that many of our students are a part of. Falcons for Change and Web at the middle school level. More of the Falcons for Change funding, but some of the funding for Web as well. And that's, again, those student leadership groups at the middle level. And then Grow Your Own, working with the Grow Your Own grant and achievement integration, helping support that as well to diversify your workforce.
Ms. Lechtenberg?
I have a question. Are all of those, like Grow Your Own is a grant, Falcons for Change is?
So Falcons for Change, like through achievement integration, we pay for the advisors for that,
Okay.
and then any of the transportation for students, because they're going out in the community quite a bit for those programs.
Okay.
Supplies that maybe are needed for that. Grow Your Own has gone along a little bit with our mentor-mentee program as well, helping support retention of teachers as well.
Uh-huh. So it's not like a separate entity, it just
No.
is, A&I helps fund that part of it.
Correct. Yep.
And how about with FACES? Is that funded totally by A&I, or is?
No, just part.
Okay. And the other parts are from other grants?
Nope, they're not all grant-based.
Okay.
So FACES, there's multiple funding streams in which we use to be able to support all of the positions we have.
Uh-huh.
And then Grow Your Own, as Heidi was talking about, there's, I won't say too much. I'll save this for Zach's presentation. But there's the grant to it, and then there's some other pieces that we do internally that A&I funding supports. So we're trying to really connect the work instead of it being, okay, here's the A&I work through the achievement and integration dollars, here's the CLSD grant goals, here's the Grow Your Own goals. We're just trying to make them all work together and put the funding behind the programs and or the projects that we are working towards.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's what we got.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Questions, comments?
Should have brought more coffee.
Thank you. Appreciate all the back and forth and great questions, board members, and thank you for answering them. Okay. That was 12B. That brings us to 12C, the e-learning plan. Ms. Corcoran.
This one's real easy. Okay. So every year, as we move into the colder weather, although it was unseasonably warm this weekend, and I'm not complaining, we need to look ahead to what our e-learning plan will be. Should Mr. Benty have to call his first snow day?
I hope he does.
So, the e-learning plan, the memo that's attached for you is just an opportunity to revisit kind of the language around it and what our plan is. And so there's statute that allows us to have 2 official snow days in which kids get to be kids, they're home, they're enjoying the fresh snow, and or staying inside if it is unsafe for them to be outside because it's too cold. After those 2 days, we then would call an e-learning day. The e-learning day, students would have an activity to do at home, or activities, I should say, that would then allow us to count it as a student contact day. And so what the statute has allowed us to do is to be more flexible on those weather-related school closure days. At the bottom, you're going to see the 3 terms. I think it's important because a lot of times we use them interchangeably, and that can be really confusing to staff and families. Distance learning is no longer a term we use, but I left it on there this year just for clarification. That was just a COVID term, so we don't use that anymore. We also then have online learning. That's our Falcons Online program. And so what we're talking about in this plan, when it's weather related, it is our e-learning plan. So again, they're all 3 models use some form of digital learning, but e-learning is when it's weather related. So we have those 2 days, no school. If we would have a 3rd one in this school year, we would call an e-learning day and we'll be able to count that as a student contact day. Questions about that?
Ms. Zavarell, in the past, has this been an action item or just a report? Do you remember? Just a report? Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Corcoran? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I think you're still hanging out for a little bit. 12D, consider approval of the 2023-2024 school calendar. I am not going to ask for a motion to approve yet until we hear a little bit more about which version we're going to go with, A or B. So, Ms. Corcoran?
Yep. So in those 2 versions, the pieces that are the same would be the start date and the end date, as well as all of the student contact days in between. And so what we're looking at with our 2 drafts is actually how we use our non-student contract days. So in version A, it's just going to be a status quo calendar. So we would start before Labor Day. We would end that week after Memorial Day. We would still have a spring break. We still have a winter break. We also continue to have Eid as a day that's observed, similar to how we have Good Friday as a day that we observe within our spring break. And so, again, things on draft A are developed in the same way that our current 22-23 school calendar exists. The difference in version B is that we would take the curriculum days and the grade level and department days, and we would actually split them into half days, combining a curriculum day with a grade level day to make a full non-student contact day. So we're not spreading the half days throughout the year. It would still be 1 day off for students. What would be different is what our staff is doing. So this year, as an example, November 4th, so next Friday, is our curriculum day for staff. So that's a day that all of our licensed staff come in. We do professional learning from 7:30 until 3:30. And so within that, it's a full day. Everybody by the end of the day, we're all So what version B allows is for there to be half days of learning and half days of planning to make a full non-student contact day. So I'm going to go into the calendar so you can follow along. So October 18th, that's typically a grade level day for teachers. So what version B allows is the morning would be a pre-K 5 day of learning. The afternoon would still be a grade level day. So since we split that in half, that means we still have a half day curriculum day and a half day grade level day to go somewhere. And so that would then be on April 10th. So again, students would not come to school on October 18th. They would not come to school on October 10th, but all of our staff would be there. And then we'd be able to do a half day of learning. Teachers would then have a half day of collaboration and planning at their discretion. So that would allow 3 professional learning days throughout the year in addition to workshop week rather than the 2 that we currently have. And so our goal in this draft was really to think about adult learning best practices. So we talk so much about student best practices, and then we continue to tell all of our teachers workshop week, I need you to know this, and don't forget any of it. And so what our hope is with version B is that we'd be able to do a little of the learning in August, we'd be able to circle back in October, build off of that learning, we'd come back together in February, they'd get to learn some more, and we'd come back in April and there would be additional professional learning. And so it would be 4 touch points throughout the year, so we could actually go deeper in the learning rather than just rapid fire and now back to the classroom and hopefully something stuck. So that's really the difference between the two. Again, like I said, the student schedule doesn't change regardless of what version is adopted. The only thing that would change is what those teacher work days would look like. What questions do you have?
Mr. Benty, you're the CEO of the district. Do you want option A or option B and why?
Professionally, I think it makes more sense to spread your professional development and your learning out across the year. So professionally, I would like to see those days spread out and the half-day professional development, half-day teacher work day.
So that's option B?
That would be option B, yes.
Okay.
I don't know what the committee said. I know there's a committee that looks at this, but professionally, that's what makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you.
So, we continue to have Kids World availability on days like the 18th and the 10th, and the 18th is tacked onto MEA. So that's already a block of time that families are used to having some time off. Thanks.
Mr. Benty referenced the committee and you said yes. Did the committee have a strong preference, A or B?
I think the committee was tired because it was a Monday afternoon. No, we really just had some great conversations about professional learning throughout the year. And so their preference would be to have it spread out. And then we also have teachers who like the full day of learning and like the full day of collaboration. So I think either way, you're going to have groups of individuals who would have a preference one way or another. I go back to what Mr. Benty said too, professionally, and when we think about adult learning, there's a lot happening on a teacher's day-to-day basis, and so the more bite-sized pieces throughout the year, I think will help us move forward farther, faster, perhaps, rather than one full day, and that's a lot of learning in one day.
Other board members, questions, comments? Mr. Olson?
Are we meeting the statute on number of school days?
Yes.
We are, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud?
A couple planned
Chair,
snow days.
really no negative statement about the calendars. This is kind of a personal issue. If you take a look at the calendar, there isn't a month that goes by where there isn't interrupted learning, students out of school. And I know that teachers need that time for professional and staff development. It would be nice if we had some process set up where students didn't have that interruption in learning. We know that time on task is probably the most important variable when it comes to learning. And I know we've talked over and over again on this board about having some alternative calendars where we take a look at, call it a year-round school or 45-15 or whatever. And so it's more of a comment than it is a question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think we heard Mr. Bente's recommendation. I don't know if board members would follow that or not, but if so, I will entertain a motion to approve either calendar A or calendar B.
I'll make a motion on.
Go ahead.
Sorry. On option B.
Okay, so Ms. Steves has made a motion to approve version B of the 2023-2024 school calendar. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you to both of you for that. Appreciate it. That brings us to item 12E, Grow Your Own Grant Update by Mr. Zach Pruitt. Welcome.
Thanks for having me tonight. Just wanted to share a little bit of an update about the Faribault Teaching Fellows opportunity, which is made available through a Grow Your Own grant from the Minnesota Department of Education. The state of Minnesota set aside resources to support Grow Your Own grants with the goal of increasing the number of teachers of color in Minnesota. The grants are for, Nasco, if you want to go, perfect. The grants are for 5 years of funding, so they run through June of 2027. Faribault was really fortunate to be one of only 11 school districts in the state that were selected for this grant. The district received $500,000 and is one of them. There were 69 different applicants from across the state, so only about 16% of applicants statewide were selected for funding. The grant will make it possible to support 20 teaching fellows with the hope that at least 18 of them will ultimately earn a teaching license in the state of Minnesota. On this slide, you can see the 11 school districts that were selected for funding. Again, just a highly competitive process, and it's great that the district was able to receive these resources. On the next slide, the Teaching Fellow program is open to applicants who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color who are either attending or plan to attend one of the Minnesota colleges that offers teaching pathways. And so those, I believe there's just shy of 750 different programs that students can attend across the state of Minnesota to be able to earn a teaching license or teaching degree. In addition, the fellows must meet at least one of the following criteria. They either need to have graduated from Faribault Public Schools, be a parent of a student in our school district, or a parent of a Faribault Public Schools graduate, or they need to live within the boundaries of the school district, or be a current employee in our district. So they just need to meet one of those 4 criteria. A couple of just important notes. The fellows who are selected, there's no obligation that they actually come and work within our district after completing the program. We have to, as a district, make sure that this is the place that they want to work and work hard to recruit those individuals. And similarly, there's no preference given to these individuals in hiring within the district. So there's no sort of leg up in the process if they do decide they want to come back and apply to work within our district. The model just is a choice with support model. What's nice about this is it really gives the fellows the choice, as we mentioned, to choose which program that they want to go to. It's not married to a specific institution. They're allowed to pick which sort of is of interest to them. The fellowship will provide last dollar tuition assistance. So after they apply for financial aid, FAFSA and receive all the federal, state, and institutional financial aid. This will help with making up that last difference in terms of tuition, which we estimate will be about $3,000 a year for the fellows. They also receive a $2,000 annual stipend to help with costs, whether that would be transportation costs, housing, childcare, those kinds of expenses that they will receive throughout their participation in the program. All the fellows will be matched with a navigator who will meet with them on a weekly basis, and that person will kind of help them work through any issues that may come up, whether that's tutoring, help completing the FAFSA, any sort of day-to-day challenges that they may run into throughout the program. They'll also be paired with a mentor teacher from within our district who will be able to be more of the professional mentor on sort of pursuing a career in the teaching profession. So that's kind of the model. The first round of applications are now open. They'll be due by 4 p.m. on Monday, November 7th. The link right there will take you to the page on the website where folks can complete the application. The aim is that there would be at least 3 rounds of applications throughout each school year over the next 5 years, or until all the funds have been awarded.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
So while a candidate is a fellow, they are focusing on their education. They're not working in our school district or interning in the school district, or is there a piece?
They can be. So they can, if they're working in another position, a paraprofessional or somewhere else in the district, they can for sure work full-time or
But that's
part-time.
not a requirement.
It's not
like,
required.
Yeah.
Nope. And there are, through the different options, there are both part-time and full-time options, in-person and online options as well. So,
How long does it take for a fellow to become a teacher if they want? Or it's self-paced, depends on
right. It could
how
take
much
4
they-
years, 4 years or longer, depending on the pace at which they're going, or if they already have some schooling already done, that would be kind of up to.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments, board members?
Have you had any early indications of applications coming in?
We have, yeah, applications have started to come in, which is exciting.
That's great.
So can you have 20 fellows total, start every year, or total for the grant?
20 total throughout the grant, at least 20. If the money ends up, if some of the fellows' their costs aren't as high as originally budgeted, we would potentially be able to have more than 20. And if we spend all the resources within, before the 5 years are up, we can also reapply to the MDE. They're offering a round of grants each year, so that would be a good situation to have, and we could explore that then too.
So if 20 people didn't apply, can the grant be extended to other groups, since we need teachers in
Great
every
question.
group?
Yeah, so Minnesota Department of Education is monitoring sort of how districts that receive this grant, because it was so competitive, how they're doing and sort of awarding sort of their fellowships. If we don't meet sort of the goals of that, there is an opportunity for them to reallocate that to other districts or to fund other applicants across the state.
Other than those 4 criteria you talked about, live in the district and be a parent, what other criteria is used to evaluate whether a fellow is accepted or not accepted?
Sure. The end result of the goal is that the folks who are accepted will ultimately earn a teaching license. So that's kind of the ultimate lens that has to be used to evaluate, because that's what the district through this grant will be held accountable towards. There's a committee of community members, teachers, administrators, parents, and students who are part of the selection process and interview process for picking the fellows, and that's what they'll use to evaluate that process.
Here in Faribault.
Here in Faribault, yeah.
That group, I mean, is based in Faribault. So no one from far away is deciding. Okay.
It's entirely a local kind of grow your own effort.
I have another question, but I don't want to jump in. Okay. So the idea here. So my first question is, is the grant sized for the different districts? Like, did Minneapolis Public Schools and St. Paul Public Schools, do they have the same size grant as we do, or do they have a much bigger one?
Yeah, that's a great question. The maximum size of the grant was $750,000. Faribault received the full amount we requested of $500,000. One of the criteria was that there had to be an equal number of grants that were given in the 7-county metro area and in greater Minnesota. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So the idea here is, say, 20 times, you said 11 districts are on this list. So these people might become teachers. They might not come work at Faribault, but they might go work in Worthington, or someone in Worthington might not go work in Worthington, but maybe they'll come and work in Faribault or Northfield, right?
Yep.
That's great.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may, so my former life being on Minnesota Board of Teaching, now Pellsby, we kind of started this work in, I think, 2015, 16, of getting grants out to local districts and whatever. I know we did with special education teachers, Grow Your Own, with special ed paras, et cetera. So grow your own programs really do work because they localize the applicants, whatever, and get into a college teacher preparation program, get licensed by Pellsby, and then, get hired, whatever. So it really does work, and thank you for your great work on this, Zach, and it does help, and obviously, not just for this particular grant, whatever, but we need teachers in front of our kids, and go from there, so thank you very much. So it's good.
Other comments or questions?
Yes, I have more. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Zach, did the grant organizers share any information with you, or can you talk at all about the impact of having teachers who look like our kids has on student achievement?
Right. I think that there's that is some of the impetus in addition to the teacher shortage that we're seeing in Minnesota. That is certainly one of the motivations kind of behind this grant competition. As Heidi mentioned, as a district, we have 3% of our teachers currently are people of color, whereas almost 60% of our students are, and so that is quite a gap. And so students, in theory, could go through their experience here without having a teacher that looks like them. And I think the research is pretty clear about the benefits of that for those students, but also for other students as well.
Yeah, and then having role models in the building who, where you can, aspire to all the pathways work we're doing, see themselves in those futures.
Okay. Any other?
Just one more question, if I may. Thank you. If a person is accepted into the program and is a fellow, and it takes me 5 years to get my license, for example, for any reasons, do I still get the stipend that is available even after the grant is done?
Can you say it one more time?
Okay, if the grant is for 3 years, right?
5 years.
Okay, all right, okay, that answers my question, thank you. I guess I wasn't listening, my fault.
Let me rephrase your question. If it took, the grant's for 5 years, if it took you 6 years.
Or 10.
Would those funds still be available to help you in that longer term process, or they cap out?
So at this point, we have the funds through June of 2027. And so we would either have to reapply as a district for time after June of 2027 in order to continue those commitments, or we would, or no. The answer would be no. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Lechtenberg.
Is there any cost up from the district for this, or is it all totally funded?
Totally funded, correct?
Totally
no cost
funded.
to the district.
Yep,
Okay,
through the
thank you.
grant.
Other questions or comments? Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We look forward to updates. I think it'll be interesting to hear how it turns out. This brings us to item 12F, consider approval of Minnesota State High School League Foundation Form A Board Resolution. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Robichaud. Mr. Benty, would you like to add anything to this?
No, it's just a standard formality that we have around grant awards classification, mainly based on our free and reduced lunch numbers across our secondary level.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a resolution. I'm sorry, thank you. Does a resolution usually have a number on it?
Well, I didn't give it a number in our numbering system.
Okay, thank you. So, with that said, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for making sure that was pointed out. If you remember right, we do now have a 12G that we added to the agenda, and this is Resolution 23-18, appointing, I think we all have a copy, Ms. Averill handed out, appointing responsible contract authority. So with that said, I will entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any further discussion? I think I recapped it earlier when we added it to it, so, but any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Bessie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 13A, school board, other items of information. School board members, the floor is yours if anybody would like to share anything.
Mr. Chair, I would. I just have a couple of items. First of all, I really appreciated the student board representatives report tonight. What an awesome pair of young ladies there. But one thing I was really, I'm really fired up about, really positive, and Dr. Robichaud alluded to it, is the student-led discussions on how they would like to improve Faribault High School. And it really is important to me on how, and I'm so impressed on how they included the students we have at the ALC. And because sometimes I think people think the ALC is a separate entity and it's on the north end. They don't, and so I'm just so proud that they went down to the ALC there and met with them and included them and blending them in, because ALC is again one of our really positive programs we have for kids in the district. Also, I'm sure as everyone else over the past month or two has heard, none of us are pleased with our test scores. And I've heard a lot saying, what are we doing? How are you going to do this? We're not happy with it. Well, the plan has been laid out. Went over our plan, where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do once we're there? So as I've said, we are doing something, have been doing something. We are teaching reading, we are teaching math intensively at the elementary and middle school levels. That laid out the plan for everyone here tonight, so I'm really positive about that. And again, it's all about how you're going to change midstream. That's why there's halftime at ball games, right? How are you going to adjust? What adjustments are you going to make? We look at our data. How do you adjust according to that data? Is that program working? No? Then we change it, or we modify it to have it again. And I think that's one thing people need to know, and that's how we're improving upon that. So thank you again for everyone reporting tonight. It was great.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Other comments, board members? No. Okay. That concludes the school board member update. Item 13B, Superintendent Benty.
Yes, so I have quite a few kind of updates here. First, I just want to give a shout out to our finance team. When they go through this audit every year, I tell people we're audited and they give me oh, what did you do wrong? I said, no, school districts are audited every single year around our finances. For us to have no findings, I asked, and they wouldn't give you a number tonight, but when I asked, they said no findings puts you in the top 5% of all schools that we do an audit with. So I think that is something that is very special, and I just want to thank our business and finance team because they do an amazing job with that, especially being transparent with where our taxpayer dollars are being spent. Some of you may have heard about what's referred to as the direct admissions piece. It had an article in the paper about a week ago, I would say, week and a half ago. This is a program that we are working with. It has to do with the state of Minnesota, and really what it comes down to is, and I'm just going to read it off of here. It says, in early October of 2022, seniors at participating high schools, which Faribault is a participating high school, who are on track to graduate will receive personalized communication co-signed by their high school and the Office of Higher Education. That lists all participating Minnesota colleges and universities they are proactively admitted to. So what this means is that our seniors will receive a letter from every college that, based on their GPA, based on the classes that they've taken, will reach out and say, you are already admitted into our school based on what we know about you already. And when the student fills out the free admission application, it is free for that student. And there are over 50 colleges and universities. There are 50 colleges, universities participating in this direct admission program, including a full range of community colleges, technical colleges, tribal, public, and private institutions. So that's one of the pieces that we are prototyping this year for our seniors. So a lot of them will be getting literature or have already gotten literature from colleges and universities and tech schools saying, you're admitted to these programs already, whether you know it or not. So, last Monday, we had a Rotary concert. So tonight we got to see the middle school band, choir, and orchestra sing and perform for us, and they did an amazing job. And last Monday night, the senior high band, choir, and orchestra performed at the Rotary concert. It's an annual deal that they do every year, and it was very well attended. Quite a few Rotarians as well as community members went there, and they put on a really nice show. So that's a tradition that we've brought back and continued as well. One of the pieces that's come across my plate, I get a lot of things that come from the national level, the state level, the local level, the Big Nine level, and I've gotten some questions on what is this curriculum that starts after the election? And I've said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've checked with Tracy. I said, it seems very strange to me that we would have a curriculum starting mid-year or one quarter in. She agrees with that. We do not have anything like that. I've reached out to other schools. They say, yep, they have heard the same thing. So that is something that is not true. We do not have a curriculum that is starting November 9th after the election. I don't know where that came from. Probably the same person that made up the litter boxes piece. That is not true either. So I spend a lot of my time, just so you know, debunking false information. So there's a lot of pieces out there that come to me almost on a daily, but definitely on a weekly basis that are simply not true, that I spend a lot of time just debunking. So I implore, since this is video or on TV or on YouTube, if you have a question, if something doesn't seem right, reach out to your school board members, reach out to me, just ask. And if I don't know the answer, I will definitely research it for you and find out what the answer is for you. So, but there's just a lot of misinformation out there. Levy update. So I just went through and counted on my calendar today. As of today, I've done 25 levy presentations across the community. And I've got a few more lined up before the election. So basically any place that wants me to come in, I come in, I do the same presentation. I give them time to ask me questions. It's going well so far. There was a little bit of a hiccup we ran into last week, was we had somebody call and say, I think the mailing that you sent out, the notice that you sent out around the levy is wrong. So Kathy and myself and Scott Gertis went through it and read it, and sure enough, the language in there was incorrect. So I called our election attorneys who wrote it. They said, yep, we are sorry, we gave you the wrong information. So last week, we had correct information printed up, and on Monday, it was mailed out. Friday it was mailed out. Today's Monday. Friday it was mailed out, and I already got some people telling me today that they've already received it. So the revision has been mailed out, and people are receiving that as well. So that was something we wanted to make sure that we were transparent about as well. I got questions about, you mailed me 7 pieces of information. You mailed me the same 7 pieces of mail, or 9. And I say, that's because you own 9 parcels of land in town. And we simply go off of the spreadsheet that we are given by the county. We do not go in and manipulate the spreadsheet at all. We simply mail it out to everyone that is on that spreadsheet that should receive it. So if you own 10 pieces of land, I had one lady say, you mailed me 19 of these. I said, that's because you own 19 parcels of land within our district. So that's unfortunately just how it works. So, and I think that is everything that I have.
Thank you. Board members, any follow-up questions for Mr. Brenti based on his comments and information? Thank you. I appreciate you setting the record straight on some of these issues that are out there. And once again, board members, if you have people reach out to you, please direct them to Mr. Brenti or schedule a call or whatever. I think that works best, so thank you. That concludes item 13. That brings us to 14, dates to remember. November 1st, 2022 at 3:30 PM is the policy meeting. November 7th, 2022 at 5:30 PM is our next work session. November 14th, 2022 at 7:30 AM is the finance meeting. And I'll also remind you that we did schedule another meeting tonight on 7:30 AM, November 16th, which will be the special meeting to canvass the returns of the school board election. And then November 21st, 2022 at 5:30 PM is our next regular board meeting. December 5th, 2022 at 5:30 PM is our December regular board meeting. And December 5th, 2022 at 6 PM is our truth and taxation meeting. If you do notice on there, we do not have a work session in December, and I think that's kind of status quo. We never do so. With that said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.